I can see it on the screen. Looks like we got video. Yeah? Okay, we're good. We're live. Okay. Like.
Or somebody from the city clerk's office, or? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking city clerk.
They kind of look like Laura, but
Miss
not
Neiman, what do
Laura.
you suggest? Okay. Okay.
We'll do the Pledge of
Do
Allegiance.
the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. So we start the agenda. Carla, how shall we proceed for the election of the chair?
So the council, excuse me, members of FOAC, the first item on the agenda is selection of a FOAC chairperson. Since we don't have a chair, you all could nominate people as you see fit.
Good.
Sorry about that. Wrong button. I would like to make a motion to nominate Representative Acevedo as the chairperson for FOAC.
And I would like to second that motion.
Okay. Okay. Next, take a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Pretty
I
unanimous.
think that passes unanimously.
Yes.
Okay. Now I'll pass the agenda to you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you to
My duties are done.
for now.
Yeah, for now.
No, thank you. Thank you for the trust that you're placing in me. This is exciting. I think we're starting off with a new FOAC, and there's a lot to learn. So I think that the agenda today is going to be helpful to kind of get us in a setting where we're going with the FOAC and just understanding the many things that you're doing. Your office is so important to the city, so I really appreciate all of your work. And before we get started, I also want to wish Representative Maldonado Rocha a very happy birthday. So I just needed to call that out.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I
birthday.
appreciate it.
So let's go into the approval of minutes, item number 2.
Okay, in your packets, you will see copies of the minutes that's been prepared by my staff. So we just need to motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I do have some
Oh,
questions in council.
go
If you
ahead.
have questions, just
Sure.
request to speak like you
Sure.
usually do.
Okay.
And then we'll just do votes out loud. We're not going to vote through the system just so we have a thing, because I know we're used to voting electronically. But before we have Rep. Maldonado's motion, I had a few things that we discussed in the last meeting. One of them was to kind of talk about ideas about the hotline with the FOAC members. We have a new FOAC, so completely understand that. And then now that 3 months have passed since the last meeting, we have Weaver coming in, so I think we don't necessarily need to do that. We'll wait on where Weaver's going to help us in terms of the hotline. But one of the other things that we had agreed to was to make sure that we were going to have some round robin conversations with the FOAC meetings and with the FOAC committee, to talk about the cybersecurity IT audits with the external quality assurance review. So I know that we postponed that item from November. It's not on today's agenda. So what I would really like is for you to meet with the FOAC members from now until the next meeting to make sure that we kind of brief us on that, because I know the last time you included about 6 pages on there, and you said it was a 4-inch binder.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of information, and I know the past FOAC had questions on that. So if you can please brief us on that and set up that meeting, I would appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll put it on the next agenda,
Okay.
because we had postponed it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hadn't placed it on the agenda for this go around because we hadn't met, so I didn't have direction.
Yeah.
So now I got direction.
No,
so.
and it makes sense. You got a
So I
new
kinda,
FOAC,
like,
so
put it on
it was a weird time, kind of transitioning from leadership. So now that we have a FOAC in place, we can move full steam ahead. Okay.
Yes,
And
I'll set up appointments with every individual member.
Perfect. I
Give 'em-
appreciate it.
Like I've always done.
Yes, of course.
I'll give you
And-
guys a good briefing.
And so we have a motion from Rep. Maldonado Rocha. Do we have a second? on
Second.
three? There's a second. Call for the vote. All in favor? Against? Okay. And I am an I too, so it passes unanimously. We could move over to number 3, presentation on the financial services function of the city. Mr. Cortinas?
It doesn't let me page because I take it off the agenda.
Good afternoon, members of FOAC, Robert Cortinas. So this presentation is really going to provide you an overview of really 2 different departments that have a key role in the overall financial services function of the city of El Paso. Really focusing on the Office of the Comptroller and the Office of Management and Budget. And so I'm going to provide you a couple of slides here at the introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over. Ms. Martin will introduce a couple of her staff members, which we feel is important for you all to get to know. And then finally, we have a slide from the Office of Management and Budget from our interim budget director, Ms. Bonnie Cordova, as well. And then Ms. Bonnie will wrap up the presentation and provide you a little bit of context as to what the role of the FOAC will be going forward. So as I mentioned, the 2 critical departments here when we speak to the financial services function of the city, the Office of the Comptroller, 3 key areas within that department. And we're going to provide you more detail from each of the individuals that oversees these key areas. So our treasury services, our fiscal operations, which is a very, very wide-ranging function, very important, and then our grants administration. And then from the budget side, Office of Management and Budget, what the budget development process looks like, the actual administration, and then aside from the actual budget, you see the management listed in there as well. They also help city departments do various studies throughout the year as well. Here are the 2 missions of these departments. Again, Office of the Comptroller really focusing on anything to do with financial transactions and internal controls. And then the Office of Management and Budget obviously focuses on the overall budget development and administration. So very similar to what you all saw when purchasing to their presentation, we are very heavily regulated, whether it's federal, state, or local laws, policies, ordinances. And so we have guidance that we follow through GASB, which is the pronouncements of which outlines our financial reporting requirements, various requirements in the local government code from the state, requirements which you'll hear about not in this presentation today, but in the future. We have our external auditor will come and talk about the annual comprehensive financial report and what he looks at, auditing the city's finances, and then the single audit related to our grants. IRS, so when we talk about bonds, tax exempt bonds obviously is something that IRS has stipulations on, so we have to follow those as well. And then obviously the city charter and city policies that we have as well. On policies, so a long list of policies related to anything to do with city finances. You'll see on the right-hand side here, this is a snippet from the My El Paso intranet. I believe you all have been introduced to this. If you have not, we can get with you and show you where you can access all of this information. It's easily searchable. You can access all city policies. This is just the financial ones. Really, so these are to really just provide guidance to all of our city departments to ensure that we're obviously being compliant with whether it's our P card, our travel, food and beverage, a wide range of different policies that we have as an organization. And really one, just to ensure also that we're standardizing our procedures, that everybody understands what the rules are, what the expectations are, and how we operate. We continue to review these periodically, something that really pushed Margarita Marin, the Comptroller and Deputy CFO, to ensure that we're continuously to update these policies as well, because things happen throughout the year. We need to make sure that we're keeping these up to date and in line with the best practices as well. On the financial reporting, so again, very similar to our policies. As you'll see on the right-hand side there, this is a screenshot of the city website from the Office of the Comptroller. All of these reports and documents are accessible and published on the city's website, not only for the current year, but for prior years as well. These are just some of them. There are many, many more, but one of the most important ones, the annual comprehensive financial report. It's a document that takes about 6 months to prepare. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And that is what we go through every year when our external auditor comes in and actually audits the city's finances. One of the things that we started a few years ago, the popular annual financial report as well. The actual document is a very, very thick binder, a lot of information included in there. And so what we started doing a few years ago was made a very, very simple, easy to read, user-friendly document. We call it the PAFR, the Popular Annual Financial Report, so that somebody who may not be able to sit down and read a balance sheet or read a financial statement can pick up this document and get a good understanding of where their tax dollars are going, the things that the cities are doing. So that's been a very, very popular item that we've started in the last few years. The annual budget as well, that document is on the website. And then some of our other documents as well. We do quarterly investment reports. We do our bond continuing disclosure anytime we issue bonds. We do our continuing disclosure. And then again, agreed upon procedures, again, just more audits that we go through from our state and federal grants. Some of the recognition. So again, very heavily regulated, a lot of policies, strong internal controls. And it's nice to be recognized for the work that the team does in ensuring that we're safeguarding city assets, that we have strong financial reporting, and that internal controls are very, very important for us in order to accomplish these recognitions. And so these are a few of them. Through GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, it's a national organization which we are members of, and so we submit on an annual basis our documents for award. And so the last couple of years we've received the Triple Crown, which is, I don't want to say it's easily achievable. There's a lot of work that goes into that. So we're one of the very, very few that have managed to accomplish it. So we've been recognized for our annual comprehensive financial report, the popular annual financial report, and then the budget document as well. So a lot of work goes into the departments you're going to hear today in producing these documents, and again, ensuring that we have strong, sound fiscal governance in our organization. The last bullet point, and probably should have been at the top, is the most important, because this is the one that we go through, as I mentioned, on an annual basis with our external auditor, and Mr. Calderon does meet with that external auditor during this process, but they're the ones that come in and do essentially testing on all of our finances, our internal controls, to ensure that, again, we're in compliance with all of the different regulations that I identified. And so we have had for the last 8 years, no audit findings, so clean, unmodified opinions. Again, so no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, which is very, very important to us as an organization. So we're currently about to wrap up our FY 2024 audit, putting the finishing touches on that. We should be meeting with the external auditor next week to wrap that up, and we are probably looking at year number 9. So again, very, very encouraging that we don't believe there will be any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies with what they will produce for the FY 2024 annual audit. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Marin, and then she's going to introduce some of her team members to go through a little bit more on the different functions.
Thank you, Mr. Cortinas. Any questions from the council? Or the committee, I'm sorry.
So do I have to request to speak? Sorry
Yes,
about
it's
that.
okay.
I have one question, and it's just for knowledge more than anything. How often are the external audits? Is there a schedule for that?
Every year.
Every year?
Every year.
Is there a time frame as far as what time of year?
We'll
Or
cover
is
that.
that-
So typically they come in around the middle of August, prior to
Okay.
the actual closing of the fiscal year, August 31st. However, the actual closing period is much longer than that. There's things that are still getting posted all the way through October, November. It typically takes, again, about a 6-month time period. So it typically goes from end of August through middle of
Through
February.
February. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And I wanted to congratulate you on the Triple Crown achievement.
Yes,
To you and your team.
absolutely.
That's great. Thank you.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Hi, good afternoon, members of the FOAC. Margarita Marin, Deputy CFO and Comptroller. So if you can, yes, thank you, the presentation. I would like to now introduce Office of the Comptroller, and so repetition is key. I met with you all during the onboarding session. We discussed the importance of this office in the management of public funds, and we established that this office is crucial to deploy internal controls citywide, also to provide oversight to the financial functions, and then come back and report, do the financial reporting for internal and external stakeholders. During that time when we met, I emphasized that our accounting system is decentralized, and even though we don't have control of everything that is happening at the department levels, our effort is to deploy those internal controls in the forms of policies, so every department follows through, and then we provide trainings if we make sure that everybody aligns with the same things within the city. So in a nutshell, Office of the Comptroller is very instrumental on establishing those internal controls, providing the oversight, ensuring that we have compliance with all the requirements that we have, and lastly, that we're able to provide those financial reports to the users. I cannot emphasize enough that while those controls are not absolute, they do provide reasonable assurance that all our organizational goals are achieved as far as operations, compliance, and reporting objectives. Once again, to build upon Robert's point, our Office of the Comptroller, we are about 40 employees. The Fiscal Operation Division has 22 employees, Grants Administration about 14, and the Treasury Division, the remaining employees. We also have a Property Control Division, and Ms. Susan will explain a little bit more of that, but they also have a very important function in regards to disposal of assets. They're not located here with us, so if you ever come and visit our office and walk through, you're gonna see a lot of accountants, senior accountants, accounting managers, executives, and very well-established office. So without further ado, I wanna present Physical Operations to you. And here is Ms. Susan Jacobs. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Susan.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Susan Jacobs, Assistant Comptroller. I'll just hit the button. Thank you. The Fiscal Operations Division is responsible for the day-to-day financial operations of the city. We ensure compliance with the governmental accounting principles that is set forth by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. We refer to them as GASB. This fiscal year, we did implement one new GASB standard. We have 4 new GASB standards coming up in the next 2 fiscal years to implement. We also ensure compliance with our bond covenants and all the internal and external laws that Robert mentioned also. Some of the sections in fiscal operations, it does cover we have a large group of responsibilities. The accounts payable section, they manage the daily administration and processing of vouchers and payments to vendors. The accounts receivable section manages the daily processing of payments received by the city, and we ensure that they're applied to the proper accounts. We process billing for other city departments that do not have the staff to bill their own charges. And we also prepare monthly dunning letters that assist with the collection of invoices. We have a city cashier that she assists with all the cashiering functions for city departments, and she assists with customers who wish to make payments over the phone. P-cards, we process all forms related to P-cards. We assist with questions from cardholders, delegates, WOEM managers. We email weekly reports of P-card charges to the departments. We do perform monthly desk reviews of P-card charges to ensure compliance with the policy. We also perform desk reviews on travel forms through a random selection, and then we do review them to ensure they adhere to the travel policy. Our payroll section, they manage the processing of paychecks of city employees bi-weekly and city retirees monthly. They prepare and remit all the applicable payments related to payroll deductions, and they manage the payroll tax reporting. The fiscal agent, we assist the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority with their voucher process payments. And we also help them with their monthly journal entries and reconciliations. And then we assist the Metropolitan Planning Organization with their annual audit. General accounting, they manage and track and report revenues due to the city, and I'll discuss that a little further on the next slide. They also process the monthly sales tax reporting to the state for all city departments. They also review the billings for the governmental leases, which was a new GASB standard that was implemented in fiscal year 22. Anything else that comes up to our department that doesn't belong to a certain section gets sent to the general accounting section, and then they do the research on that. Capital assets, they manage the capital assets necessary to safeguard our city assets, and they ensure compliance with our internal policy. As they mentioned, the property control is responsible for the inventory of capital assets for all city departments, and then any excess or retired assets are sent to property control, and then they auction them on the GovDeals online marketplace. Debt management, they manage all of the city debt. They review and prepare the reporting requirements related to the outstanding debt. They process our debt payments and prepare the annual debt budget. And we do conduct an annual post-issuance compliance review for our tax-exempt debt to ensure compliance with the federal tax code. Financial reporting is responsible for the preparation of the ACFR, the PAFR, and our quarterly financial statements. And as said, all these reports are on our website. We do prepare the monthly treasurer's report for the City of El Paso Employees Retirement Trust, which is referred to as CERT, and we assist CERT with their annual audit. For revenues, we track and record revenues due to the city. Some examples are the property tax, utility franchise tax, hotel occupancy tax, and the motor vehicle rental tax. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions from the council? Or the committee, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon, members of the FOAC, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elda Rodriguez-Hefner. I'm the city's grants administrator at the Office of the Comptroller. Just like they mentioned, grants administration is one of the pillars that makes up the Office of the Comptroller. I want to start giving you a little bit of background. Back in FY16, this division was created mainly to serve as the clearinghouse for all of the city's grant activities. We wanted to provide some structure and consistency throughout the city. We generate a lot of reports, including tracking all of the city grants, all of the city applications, whether they are approved or not. We also track all the grant awards at the time of award. We provide guidance to the departments to ensure that they are in compliance with the grant agreements. We usually work with anywhere from 15 to 20 federal agencies, 15 to 20 state agencies. They all have their different requirements, and we make sure that we are complying with all of their requirements as well as with the federal rules and uniform guidance. We also produce this this thin report that is actually very important. It includes all of the fiscal year expenditure activity of all of the grants, all the city's grants for federal and state awards. And so this is a very important document because it gets uploaded to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, where this is where all of the agencies, state, federal, even private, will go into and review our reports to see if how we manage our grants. or can we manage our grants? As it's been mentioned before, we have 8 years, consecutive years of no findings, which is a very good thing for the city because it puts us as a low-risk entity and allows for more funding, less restrictions, and it's, well, it continues to, the money continues to flow. During FY24, we had approximately 341 federal active grants, 53 federal, state active grants, which means that they all had activity. We, in the Grants Administration Division, our role is to ensure that we are reporting accurately and timely. We check all of the costs that are incurred against a grant, that we charge against a grant, to make sure that it's an allowable cost, meaning that we can, that the grant does cover for that cost. From FY16 to present, we have had oversight of north of $1.4 billion of awards. And since FY17 to date, we have managed over $1 billion of expenditures. This centralized oversight system that we have has provided consistency and a structured process citywide. The departments know what to do, and they have a guide to follow the process, and if they have any questions, we are always available to help them out. During COVID, when we had the CARES funding, and now with ARPA, we also developed manuals to help the departments to guide them through the process so that they could maneuver the allocation of monies to their programs or their projects. We updated them as updates came because those rules changed quite a bit. But basically that is grants administration in a nutshell. Lots of activity there. Thank you. And
Are there any questions on the grants?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are we able to, is the little book that you shared, is that available online, or how can we review it?
Yes.
I'm curious to know more about how, the expenditures are within the different grants that we receive.
yes, this is available. It is posted on the website.
Okay.
The one that Robert showed under the Office of the Comptroller under single audits.
Okay.
And this is a summary, if you will, of all of the expenditures by program, by federal agency. We also have subrecipients. We have to show how much money is passed on to subrecipients, and I forgot that part, but last year we established a program to help the departments with their subrecipient monitoring. What happens is that just like we have to comply with all those rules, the grant agreement, the federal rules, so do they. And we have to ensure that they are doing it. So the department that has that grant and has passed it on to that entity, a nonprofit organization, for example, we have to monitor their activity. So we evaluate what the department is doing to make sure that they are following all the rules, and that if there is any feedback or any suggestion, that we provide them with some help.
Okay, no, thank you for that. I think I'm curious to know more about it, just because in general, I know there's been a lot of conversation of the future of grants, specifically here within our organization. And I'm thankful for Ms. Dion also for sharing, the current grants that we receive and whatnot. But thank you for that. Thank you.
And I wanted to add a little bit on what Representative Nino was saying. I want to have an understanding, and it's okay if you don't have off the top of your head, but if you could get us this information. What is the percentage of grants that we have to provide a match versus the ones that we don't?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but we do, since, I do have that number though, since 16, we've provided, you know what, I rather give you exact numbers,
It's
so
okay.
I'll get that to you.
Yeah, you could just share that by email
Sure.
with the FOAC. I think we would appreciate that.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. And Luis Mier, our Treasury Coordinator.
Good afternoon, members of FOAC. My name is Luis Mier. I am the Treasury Services Coordinator for the City of El Paso. Good afternoon. So if we think about the function of Treasury, the function is primarily that of managing the city's liquidity. And we have two areas, banking and investments, and we can think of liquidity sort of as the bridge between the two. And so we have money that will flow from the banking side to the investment side, and from the investment side back to the banking side. And that has to do with our actual day liquidity position. So money flows into the city, and ultimately, obviously, money will flow out. In that interim period, that creates a situation of idle cash, and that creates an opportunity for investment of that idle cash. We take and we pool the cash that the city has idle, excuse me, and we invest it. And what we leave in the bank each day is sufficient only to cover the outstanding checks for that day. So we go through a process every single day of calculating out the city's liquidity position and then determining, do we need to invest or do we need to liquidate some form of investment to cover that day's liquidity needs? The single biggest impact on investment earnings is probably consistent daily management of that liquidity position and then going through and doing some sort of investment with those idle funds. The city's investments are managed in accordance with state law, city ordinances, and the city's investment policy. The city's investment policy establishes 3 orders of priority for our investments. Number 1, preservation of capital. So we don't want to lose. We don't want to lose city funds. We don't want to lose public funds. And so that is guided, that is managed through the type of investments that we engage in. The second order of priority is liquidity. So we want to be sure that at any given point in time, on any given day, the city has the liquidity it needs to meet payables to vendors, to meet payroll, and so forth. The earnings that the portfolio generates then go towards funding city activities, the things that the city is in the business of accomplishing for the citizens. The cumulative earnings, so we established a formal investment program September 1, 2017. And from that point through end of last month, January 31st of 2025, through that continuum, cumulatively, the earnings themselves have been in excess of $120 million. And if we think about how that's allocated out to the different underlying funds of the city, general fund has received in excess of $12 million over that time. The reserves and stabilization funds in excess of $5 million. The debt service fund in excess of $8 million. Special revenue funds, which include the grant funds, in excess of $18 million. Enterprise funds, such as airport and ESD, in excess of $32 million. And then our capital projects have received, since 2017 to last month, in excess of $42 million in earnings allocations. Our overall strategy, if we can think of it in 2 sort of segments or tangents, is what and when. And so the what becomes what we invest in. And so those are dictated by state law and our investment policy. And then the when is driven by our cash forecast. And so we maintain a cash forecast, a 3-year cash forecast, but it's actually thought of better as a 157-week cash forecast. And so that will drive when we need, if we have idle funds, when we place them out. And so, for example, if our cash flow model indicates that we have excess funds and we need them back the 3rd week of July of 2026, then we place it at that point so that we have the liquidity in that week through the maturity of those investments. And that's important to think of it in terms of a week-by-week cash forecast, because it doesn't do us any good to have money coming back at the end of the month if we need it at the beginning of the month. And so a very good example would be the bond payment. So in August, on August 15th, the city will make a bond payment. We need to have those funds available prior to August 15th. It would do us no good to have those maturities on August 31st. Finally, with regards to investments, through agreement with the CRRMA, we also manage the RMA's investments, and we manage the investment of the PFC funds, which are the passenger facility charges related to the airport. With regards to liquidity, I've talked a little bit about, we go through a process of calculating out and establishing what the city's liquidity position is on any given day. And we have a formal process we go through and we calculate that out. The banking side of it, the controls on it, we can think of in terms of how money could leave the city, and then we place the controls on those various ways that can happen. So obviously checks are one way that we have money leave the city. And so we establish controls on those, one primarily being positive pay, which is a means of telling the bank, these are the specific checks that we have authorized. These are the payees, these are the amounts, these are the check numbers. And if someone tries to present a check for payment at the bank that doesn't align with that, then it gets routed to a portal that then we can go in and approve or disapprove. And there could be reasons why something might not match up exactly, and it could go there, and then we would have the research done on it and then approve it. Oftentimes, though, we can have situations of fraud, and so then those are rejected. We also, in Treasury, are responsible for unclaimed property. So checks that are issued that do not clear within 3 years are then escheated to the state. We have various internal controls, fraud manager being one, and that's the one at the bank. We have segregation of duties and a review of the outflows. And there are a variety of tools we use in Treasury that we've developed internally to optimize the things that we are doing, whether it's calculating positions or simply managing information. Any questions, or can I expand on anything I might have mentioned previously?
I have Rep. Chavez.
Thank you. I thank you for that presentation. It's fascinating to me. I have 2 questions. The first is, how many people work on this team?
There are 4 of us.
4 of you. That's a lot of work for 4 people. And the second question is, I know you talked about dollar amounts of your returns, but more or less the average percentage in yields, what would that be?
And so obviously that fluctuates with where market rates are going to be. We came out of COVID in a near zero situation, and so for quite a while it was a challenge to earn investment earnings. Currently, we are at approximately 4% on the portfolio, and that's a combination of short-term investments and long-term investments. So it's a blended rate of return on the portfolio.
That's not bad. Thank you. That's great.
Just to clarify, we are prohibited from investing in the equity markets, so we deal solely in the bond markets, and so those rates tend to be, those yields
Sure.
and those rates of return tend to be significantly less.
Yes. Thank you.
Representative Nino.
Thank you, Chairman. I know that you mentioned that when it becomes unclaimed property is when it's 3 years, right? And in the process of those 3 years, do we do outreach to those individuals, letting them know that there's unclaimed property that we are trying to? How is that process? How does it work? I've visited the Texas Unclaimed Property website, and I find it fascinating just because so many different entities and individuals might not be aware that they have unclaimed property. I know there's millions and billions of dollars in that system. And I'm just curious to know the process of the city of El Paso, how we kind of do that outreach and communicate to the community that they might have unclaimed property.
Sure. So we start off obviously issuing a payment, and what we're talking about is checks, because when we pay a vendor via ACH, then it's automatic. It hits their bank the next day. So with an ACH, think of it as an electronic payment to someone. We'll upload the file to the bank, and then the payee receives the funds the very next day, the very next business day. With a check, we'll issue a check, and then that is most likely mailed to the entity or the individual. And so then we run into a situation where, for whatever reason, maybe it doesn't arrive or it's lost after they've received it, whatever the case. We'll have a situation where that is voided and reissued. And so we'll have frequently those kind of situations. The vendor will reach back, say I didn't receive it, or I lost it, or I opened the envelope and accidentally ripped apart the check. And so we'll have a process for voiding and reissuing that payment. But we'll go through this iteration, and then what will happen is departments will then make an effort to reach out and try to find out, okay, what do we need to do to go ahead and get this cleared and resolved? It's when we go through a process, which for payables is 3 years, for payrolls actually 1 year. But we go through a process of trying to get this cleared out, and when we reach essentially the end and we can't go any further with it, then we go ahead and group those together, and off to the state they go. And so at that point it becomes the individual or the entity's essentially course of action to reach out to the state and request that those funds be remitted back to the individual or the entity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all the important work you're doing. This was really good. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Ms. Cordova.
Alrighty, switching gears, Bonnie Cordova, Interim Director, OMB. So I'll begin with our main focus, right, our main bread and butter for our department, if you will, which is composed of about 10 of us that monitor the roughly 30 departments throughout the city. So budget development, a regular budget cycle will look like the development of the multi-year financial outlook, which we'll be presenting soon. Budget preparation manual and forms provided to all departments, just what they can expect for the upcoming year, definitely all the key dates that they need to be aware of. Position budgeting done by department OMB analyst. So our office is in charge of doing all position budgeting for the city. Departments enter their revenue and operational expense budgets within our budget module. So then after that is implemented or entered, I should say, city manager reviews the requested budgets with the departments. That usually is about a week, 2 week time frame. OMB refines budget requests to become the city manager's preliminary budget. Then we go through the budget workshops that we hold and present with you all, city manager, our office, and departments for further discussion. City manager then presents proposed budget to city council. Then we hold the public hearing on the proposed budget, and then we get to city council adopting the city budget. So this is a time frame from roughly internally, we start February, takes us all the way through August, our end of the fiscal year, and getting us to September 1st for the new fiscal year. Once it's been implemented, adopted, our main function becomes monitoring and reporting, monthly department revenue and expenditure analysis that we do for the departments that are in our portfolio, quarterly financial report that we present to council, and then again, multi-year financial outlook, looking at our cost drivers, economic impacts that we need to take into consideration, and review of department staffing tables. We are comprised mainly of people, so we are big in that area. Approval of department budget transfer requests throughout the year, so we make sure that departments are able to fulfill the services that they need to. Also, comes with our Office of Management and Budget is the management side. So we examine and evaluate current business processes within the city, organizational structure and functions, and we update when necessary. Review and evaluate service delivery methods and systems, working hand in hand with the departments. Identify opportunities for improvement to services and implement changes to standard operating procedures. We come as the fresh eyes sometimes to the departments. Some recent examples include competitive wage analysis that we've done for several departments, the police fleet replacement plan, and parks, assets, and acreage study. Any questions?
Rep. Maldonado Rocha.
Thank you so much for the outlook on that. I appreciate it. Just one question. When you say multi-year financial outlook, what's the outlook period on that? Is it 5 years?
5 years.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Anyone else? Are we back to Ms. Marin then? Thank you so much for your presentation.
Okay, Margarita Marin again, City Comptroller, Deputy CFO. I want to go back to the question that Representative Nino had as far as the checks, because I think it's important that I make you aware of another process that we have in place, which is the ACH. So even if we still have little bit of checks here and there, we have worked very hard with the purchasing department to make sure that every vendor that does business with the city is now set up in ACH, so we avoid the check fraud and all that we have out there. So yeah, to protect public funds. So now I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. So so you heard Robert talking about all the achievements that we have as a city, all the internal controls that we have in place to protect the public funds, the importance of those policies. He also showed you the reports that we have and everything that we do as far as financial services to ensure that we provide those good services to the community by protecting those funds. You heard about our Crown Medallion, which make us very, very proud, and the 8 years with no audit findings. So we have to understand that the role of these two offices are very important to the city as a whole, to what we do as a city as far as finance, but also we have to understand the role of the FOAC, and that's what I want to talk about next. And I'd like to bring the presentation. There you go. So even though management has primary responsibility setting up those internal controls, the FOAC of the governing body has the ultimate responsibility for those controls, and that's where you all come into play here. So the purpose of the FOAC, as established by the city charter, section 3.6b, goes back to 3 different things, right? So you have the oversight function, the review function, and then the recommendation function. As far as the oversight, you're gonna be working very closely with the internal auditor, and you're gonna be exposed to different type of reports. You're gonna be hearing from the internal audit department, you're gonna be hearing from actuaries that here and there come and present to you, and then from our finance department, and as well, you're gonna be listening to the external auditors. Then you're gonna be able to review this information, discuss with management, and then provide recommendations to the full council when the time comes. Now, as far as best practices, the Government Finance Officer Association is an organization that we look up to because they do provide best practices for municipalities. So part of the best practices in regards to the Financial Oversight and Audit Committee goes back to making you aware that you are responsible for the quality of financial reporting. And you might think, how? We're not preparing those reports. But just because you are aware and you work with the finance team, the ultimate responsibility, again, resides with you. So you work with us, you review those reports, you make sure that we have strong controls in place to avoid errors, fraud, or misstatements of financial information. So everything that is deployed to the community and to the users is transparent and as accurate as it can be. As far as the internal controls, again, that's why you work closely with us and we provide recommendations to you, but it's your review and your guidance that makes sure that all the controls that the city has in place to safeguard our assets and the public funds are on point, right? Lastly, as you hear from the external auditors, when they come back to present the results of the audit, it's very important that you are in the same page with us, with the leadership team and the employees, as far as implementing the recommendations from the audit team. They're gonna come back with things that they observe, and it's important for us that right away we address it. So having your support done at the top is very important, and also ensuring that you help us get the resources that we need to comply with those requirements and address any recommendations that they might have. So this concludes our presentation. Any questions?
Thank you for that. I think that's really important and I think this is really good for the next item to kind of set it up in that sense. And I'm really happy with how this information was presented today, because I think as we've been having conversations throughout the last few months, we really need to strengthen the foe of the FOAC and have more financial oversight here, right? And so I would encourage my fellow committee members to talk to me if you have any ideas on financial oversight. Talk to Ms. Mack about it. I think that that's really important, because I think we can really strengthen that financial oversight of the city. This is important to the committee. And then I also think that it could even be complementary to the budget process each year. So I don't know if you have something to say, Ms. Mack.
I think that was our intention. We really took a look at the charter and really thought about, what the financial oversight and the audit committee could play. And I think the team did an exceptional job of really showing you. We have, I think, most of my team in the audience.
Yes.
Hey, folks. I thank them all for their work. But I think it really is a good opportunity. We've been thinking about the cadence of this committee. There's lots of things that are in the queue right now that we've been talking about in terms of actuarial reports and things that we have within our strategic plan that we have never necessarily used this audience to be able to show you the details of that. So we look forward to really launching this FOAC in a way that is really strengthening our internal controls, really having deeper understanding of the things that we are doing as a city. I think it also helps us to tell a better story. I think, it isn't always about, the things we can't afford in the community, but what are the things we're doing to really protect those assets so we can have the best benefit? And I think that gives us an opportunity in a public setting to do so. So I thank you all for listening to my team, and I thank them all for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Mack. Mr. Cortinas, did you have something? I just saw you get up like you.
No, Ms.
Okay,
Mack,
she said it all.
The only thing that we've talked about internally is that the FOAC only meets quarterly, and so that creates a little bit of a challenge from us when we have certain items that may be time sensitive. But we can have those discussions moving forward on what we do as far as meetings with the FOAC going forward.
Yeah, and I think overall we have to meet quarterly, right? But I think if we added more meetings, it would be something that would be okay.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think we really need to set a meeting schedule, just like we have a meeting schedule for city council posted on the city clerk's website. We should do the same for this. So if we look at it every other month or monthly, or just dependent on what the calendar is going to look like as we're getting into budget, you might want to do monthly. And then once we're finished with budget, we could go back to quarterly. But we could have those conversations, and then we could propose a good calendar for the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello, the Elda Rodriguez Hefner again. I have a response to your question Representative Nino, and that is overall from 16 to present, we have a 23% of grants that require a match. It varies every fiscal year, but that's an average, so about 23%.
Thank you for that information. Rep Chavez, you had something?
I wanted to thank the team. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to be a part of FOAC and to help and contribute in any way possible. I also believe that the financial health of our city is something that constituents think about, not necessarily worry about, but it is in their mind. And so as long as we show transparency, it would be a great step forward. And I also wanted to bring forward, that idea of meeting more regularly, hopefully monthly, especially since there's so many new members on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Rep Chavez. I also feel like we might have to go in that way of meeting monthly, and we'll figure that out. I think we can't do Monday, Tuesday because it gets too complicated, and then Wednesdays I know staff is busy preparing for the next council meeting, so I think Thursdays might be the ideal day around this time, but we'll figure it out. The next item is the introduction of the Internal Audit Department. I asked Mr. Calderon to kind of prepare an overview of what the Audit Department does, as we have new council members on here, new committee members as well, to have an understanding of that. What I'll ask the FOAC is, as you kind of have questions, because there's a lot of information presented on this item and the next item, just request to speak, and I'll pause Mr. Calderon once I see a critical mass. So we could kind of answer the questions as we're going through the information that Mr. Calderon is going to present.
Thank you. There we go. Well, good afternoon. I cannot tell you how excited I am with all the conversations. I really like about more meetings. For the record, Edmundo Calderon, Chief Internal Auditor for the City of El Paso. As Dr. Acevedo just said, he had asked me if I could do this presentation, and I put it together. I do a PowerPoint. I did kind of an outline. I'm an outline type of guy. So we have that. Before we get started, I was going to bring the staff up, but I'm just going to have them stand up. That way you can kind of see the internal audit staff. So my crew, if you could stand up and meet. There are 9 of us in the internal audit department. Okay, so well, let me get my other stuff here. And out of the 9, we have 9 qualified professional internal auditors on staff. Out of the 9 internal auditors, let me give you a list of their credentials. They are very highly educated and they're highly credentialed. That's the way I hire them, and that's the way I train them, and I encourage that they maintain their continuing education for their certifications, and plus I encourage them to continue to get certifications if they're not. I got a couple that are candidates right now to become certified internal auditors. So they're in the testing process right now. My office, actually, we support them. We have training budget that we can help them get there, and then we also have budget money available to help them with their testing fees. And then we also have tuition assistance that also helps us with testing fees that they need when they do sit for their exams. So out of the 9 professionals that I have on staff, 6 of us have master's degrees, okay? 5 of us are certified government auditing professionals. That means they're certified to audit in government, 5 of them. 4 of us are certified internal auditors, and I'm a CIA. Doesn't mean I'm a spy. I'm a certified internal auditor, and I'm also a certified government auditing professional. We also have 3 certified fraud examiners that they're skilled in identifying and reviewing fraud situations. We have 1 certified public accountant on staff. We have 1 certified in risk management assurance. That's me, because I'm certified on doing risk assessments and evaluating and conducting them. And then I have 1 that's a certified government finance manager, a CGFM. Now, that doesn't mean they're all, some of my auditors have multiple certifications like myself. I carry 3, plus my master's degree. So that's kind of how we're built, okay? Next, I wanted to talk about the auditing standards and the governance we work under. First off, we work under the global internal audit standards. We actually adopted the newly revised. We adopted as of September 1st of September, I think it was 3rd of last year of 2024. So we've been operating under those standards since then. We had been working on it like a year prior, getting ready for the transition over. In addition to the global internal audit standards, which they used to be referred to as the international standards, we also comply by the generally accepted government auditing standards, which are also known as the federal standards, which are issued by the Government Accountability Office, which is actually the auditors for Congress. They maintain this sets of standards. The global standards are known as the Red Book, because sometimes you might hear me refer to them as the red standards, and the reason is because the cover of the book is red. And then we have the yellow, which is the federal, which are the government, the generally accepted government auditing standards. So those are the 2 professional standards that we follow. C, we have the city charter, and there's the 2 sections that are contained in the city charter that address the internal audit function and the FOAC. And pretty focused requirements. I don't want to bore you with reading them. I can if you want me to, but basically, like Margarita and Robert said earlier, you know, there's really 2 components for FOAC. One is the FO, the financial oversight, which is pretty broad and large in nature, because as you know, you will learn as you continue your lives on city council, we're a big boat. We're a big ship. Okay, the city of El Paso is huge. If we were a private company, we would be one of the big ones in the country. We were a private company, but we're a government. And then the AC part of it, the audit committee, which is the oversight that the FOAC has over the internal audit function, where I report functionally to the chair of the FOAC, and then administratively, I also report to the FOAC as a whole. So those are my reporting lines. It kind of shifted in 2023. Okay. And then D is the other governance document that we have, which is our internal audit charter. And that pretty much guarantees the internal audit department's organizational independence. Because one of the key components of being an internal audit function within a government, really within any corporate or government setting, is your internal auditor has to maintain their organizational independence from the other, the operations side of the house. And we do that. If you ever look at our org chart, you will see my little box. It's way over to the right all by itself. And then my line goes to the city council. So that's how that works. It also describes the responsibilities and duties for the chief internal auditor, for myself, and it's pretty specific. The key functions that we do, which is number 3, we provide operational performance, compliance, financial, strategic, and advisory audits. You might say, wow, that's a lot, and yes, it is, but that's pretty much a standard function of an internal audit department or a function, is to provide these types of services. We're not just locked in like most external CPA firms. They might just focus on financial audits. And they might include maybe some agreed upon procedures that they do, which are specialized areas that they will evaluate. But an internal audit function usually is a little bit broader. And that's why most organizations have their internal audit function within the organization, because I've been here 20 years. Okay, I started in 2005. A lot of knowledge in my head. There's a lot of history in my head, but that helps us because I understand the departments. I understand a lot of their history, where they've been and where they're going. And that helps us in conducting the audit work. My philosophy has always been, I am not an I got you auditor. That's not the way I operate. My goal is to help the departments, to assist them to meet their goals, okay? It's not about me, it's about the departments, to help the city manager, her deputies, meet the goals that they want to do for the period that we're looking at. But that's the type of services we offer. So if you'll go to the next page, I'll give you a short little list of what we offer. And then you'll see we actually did some attachments to this, and you can see like Appendix A has the city charter verbiage that we just cut and paste and put in a nice little document for you. B, attachment B, Appendix B is the internal audit charter. That's the current charter that we're operating under. I know right now it's currently under review, so I expect to see some changes in there, and I kind of welcome them. You know, it's kind of good to have an outside party take a look at sometimes your processes to see what you're doing and how you're doing it. And if you can recall at the last page, you'll see I actually had the FOAC. At that time, they actually signed off on it. Before, when I reported to the city manager, we would have the city manager sign it, but that reporting line changed, so we did it this way. And then you'll see I acknowledge receipt of it at the end. So some of the types of audits and services that we provide. A, we develop and complete a flexible, risk-based annual audit plan. Hopefully later, as we start meeting more regularly, I'll talk it over with Dr. Acevedo and see, maybe we can have a small little section in there. I can give you an update on how we do things, a little bit of training. I've done it in other organizations I've worked at, and I know when I always had a new audit committee, they would they would ask me, what do you do and how do you do it? And I would like to kind of take that opportunity and kind of show you how we do an audit, how we put the audit plan together, how we do a hotel audit, how we do a franchise fee audit on a utility. That way you have the knowledge and you can answer questions if you're asked by your constituency, okay? We issue quarterly reports to the Financial Oversight and Audit Committee. We're gonna go over one shortly, so I'll show you how they're built. They're pretty generic. I believe in consistency, because if you have consistency, it's easier to understand it and remember it. So we do that. We're required to conduct follow-up audits. This is always a big question I get asked. Once you do an audit, do you go back? Yes, we do. You'll see them when we start reporting out that we do follow-up audits on audits we completed. We track the findings, we track the recommendation and the management's response we get from the department. And then they gave me an implementation date. That's kind of a más o menos type of date. And we'll monitor it, and as soon as they're ready for review, we'll go in and do a follow-up and report back to you on how they did on the recommendations, okay? We develop and implement a quality assurance and improvement program. What that is a quality control program. If you ever would like to visit the office, I can show you how that works. We have a very intense level of review for quality. When we write a report, we'll have the initial reviewer, then we have the second reviewer, and then you got the third reviewer. The third reviewer is me. And for the report to go final, it has to get past me. So I'm very intense when I do these. I want to make sure we cover every possible angle or question that we might get from that audit report, okay? So that then we have E. We conduct a triennial external quality assessment of the internal audit department. I know I've mentioned that to a few of you, but every 3 years I go through an external quality assurance review. Those are usually, I've gone through 6 of them in my history here with the city. We contract with the Association of Local Government Auditors, and what happens there, they select a team, usually 3-4 other city or county auditors, and they will come in and they will review me. And trust me, it's a very thorough review. I can always show you the checklist that they go through. I think for the global standards, it's like over 120 questions they will go through for us to pass review. We're one of the few internal audit shops in this area, in this region that does this. I know we do it, UTEP does it, Texas Tech does it. Other people are working toward it. It's not an easy place to get to. It takes a lot of work. You'll see in our audit plan that we're actually we'll do a self-assessment, because the last one we did, the report was dated March of 2023. I put a copy of it in the packet for you. So you'll see the reports we got, and you'll see my responses that I provided to the reviewers. So it was really intense. And the big one there was they wanted us to do more cybersecurity audits. So we're working on it. We're coming up with a good procedure to review city departments. I'm working with IT. It's a whole process there. Our next assessment is scheduled for 2026, and that'll be for fiscal years 2023 to fiscal years 2025. So we'll be going through that review next year. We'll have to schedule it. And when they come in, just like the Weaver auditors met with you, this review team will also meet with the FOAC, and they'll have a very intense meeting with you, a very detailed meeting. They also meet with the city manager and CFO. We can get on the schedule, and they actually talk to a vast variety of people when they do their assessment of our office. Okay. We perform advisory services as requested. That's number F. Now you might ask, what's that? It's kind of a consulting. We just finished one. We're actually going to talk about it a little bit. We actually did one for the pension office, the city of El Paso, the civilian pension, not the police or fire. They had requested us to help them with a project they were working on digitizing records. So we can do those, but we do them by agreement. So we agree on the scope and objective of that work, and we'll get that done. We provide an annual report to the FOAC on measured goals and results. You weren't here, I think Dr. Acevedo was. We did report on it on the fourth quarter report, and we give you some measurements that we keep track of. The ones my experience tells us to do, I don't know, maybe Weaver will give me one or two more measurements to do, and we can include those. But we got a lot of data. We got a lot of data in our office. So I think it's ripe for maybe add one or two more. And I actually told Weaver that the other day when we met. We monitor the results of the audits conducted by our external or third-party auditors, specifically our annual external financial audit that Robert was just talking about. I meet with the external auditors. We have a standing meeting. Matter of fact, I have several meetings with them during the year. And we go over the internal controls, high-risk areas, areas of concern. They actually keep an eye on our website and look at the audit reports that we issue. And sometimes they might have a question or two regarding those audit reports. But we work very closely with them. I mean, I think we're like on our fourth firm now since I've been here. So that's always a welcome meeting. I like having that. We administer the City of El Paso Anonymous Employee Hotline, Appendix D. You might see some of the flyers. They're a little comical in a sense, but you'll see them like this. And the little happy face, that's kind of the logo we picked on our samples that we were given. But more important, I wanted to show you the last page, the very last page. These are little business cards that we give out during new employee orientation. We might get a request from a department to do a hotline presentation to their staff. Sometimes council might ask me, but we are one of the few hotlines in this country that actually has promotional material in English and Spanish. The reason being, a lot of our employees, English is not their first language, Spanish is. So our contractor that answers the phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days. Trust me, I've called on Christmas Eve, somebody's there. Okay, they can take the calls in English and Spanish. And it's very interesting when we do get them. We'll get a hotline report in and it's in Spanish, and then we have to translate it. But I got staff; they know how to do that magic, and they can translate the report into English, and then we'll share it if it's something we share with the HR department that they might do for us. So we have that. We also conduct hotel occupancy tax audits. One day, I know you're going to get a phone call from some hotel that's really mad at me because we do an audit and they owe us additional hot tax. Over the years, I think we're starting the next round of audits. We do about 20 hotels a year. We're on round 9, and we've been able to identify and assist in the collection of an additional $3 million in additional hot tax for the city of El Paso. It's a big successful program for us, and I co-source it with an outside contractor that comes in and helps us because we have over about 110 hotels and growing, because I just read an article that there's more hotels in the drawing board to open in El Paso, so that's just going to expand our scope. But it's been a very good program. Another specialized audit service that we provide is we conduct sales tax discovery. This one has not been as successful for us as hotel occupancy tax because the objective of this audit is to look for new retailers, new taxpayers. I know a couple of you have run your own businesses, so you understand sales tax. So we've actually, in the years that we've been doing this, we've only identified 2 new taxpayers. We have a technique in the contractor we co-source with. We use a lot of public records to try to identify these new retailers, but we've only identified 2 over the years. We got a tattoo shop that moved into El Paso and a beauty salon moved in. But we got them on the tax rolls. So small victory, but a victory. We also conduct franchise fees audits of utility companies. We've actually done I was going to say El Paso Natural Gas, that's another thing. Texas Gas. We've actually looked at the gas company. We actually have looked at Spectrum Cable. They're a DBA from Charter Communications. We've actually looked at them. We're getting ready to start the next utility audit, and we're actually looking at El Paso Water Utilities. We got a little specialized twist on this one. And when I meet with you one-on-one, I'll share that information. I don't want to let that one out quite yet. And then the last thing, we maintain the Clearview sales tax database. And a lot of you might ask, what is that? Every year I submit an open records request to the state comptroller's office, and we get all the sales tax information for every retailer in the city of El Paso. Every retailer. Everybody from a Walmart, Target, to the little burrito shop at the corner. We get everybody, and then what we do through our contractor, we dump it into a giant database, and that database, we're allowed to do searches. We can do searches. We can do it by industry, by location, by name, individual retailer name. Very highly confidential information. We have to be careful how we use it, but we do have access to it. I know our budget office uses it. Our economic development department has used that database for different projects they're working on. But that pretty much concludes my update. I don't know if you have any questions. I try to make it short. So is there any questions on any one of these special things we do?
Maldonado Rocha.
I don't have any questions, Mundo, but I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the overview. I took some time to look through all of the audits that you and your office have provided already, and I have found them to be very easy to follow, along with the recommendations and the findings. So I appreciate the format. Until I get a little used to seeing the actual reports and how that get used to really seeing that in a daily function. I know I'll get better at that, but for a first timer seeing those, having some familiarity with them from the outside of the city, I do appreciate the ease to read that. So thank you for that.
Yes, I did get a call from your office last week.
Yes. So I'll just because one of the things that I want to try to bring, even though I know that you provide all of this. It's available on the website. It's available everywhere. People, I need to encourage people to look for that. And so one thing that I have committed to you and your office is to add that to my newsletters, add that to my community meetings, so that they understand that there is a schedule of audits, there is an internal auditor that conducts these, and there is a timeline for them, and that this is where they can find those findings from those audits.
Yes.
So hopefully it can create maybe less questions. Who knows? Maybe it'll ask more. I don't know what that'll look like, but it's in the spirit of transparency, which you already have. I'm just giving another platform to.
Sure.
So thank you for that, Mundo.
Yeah, I had told your staff, Julia, I believe was
Yes.
her name. Tia Julia. So I told her that, yeah, you guys, your office can use them for your community meetings or whatever you need them for. I told her I was available if you needed me to present at your community meetings. I've done that in the past for different FOAC committee members. Even city council people have asked me to present at their community meetings, and I can show everybody how we have a very disciplined program, especially in selecting the audits, how they're done. How we follow the professional standards on those to the letter.
Right.
We do a risk assessment, and the audits are all risk-based. Do I get every highly rated high-risk area? No, I don't, because I don't have enough people. I mean, we get the highest of the high, and we'll go that, and then we'll get the other ones. If we don't get them that year, we'll get the next year. We'll put them on the plan and see if we can get to them. But it's a very, very disciplined approach. That's the way I was trained, and that's a program I brought to the city, and it's successful.
Thank you, Mundo. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Representative Chavez.
Thank you, Chairman. I also want to thank you, Mr. Calderon, for taking the time to drop all of these audits to my office, but also sending them through email just to make sure that I did receive them. And I did also take the time to review them. And I have a lot of questions, not because I'm questioning you specifically, just because I'm still trying to learn the process. And so if you'll bear with me and be patient enough to answer these questions. Sure. For example, I was reviewing the planning and inspections audit. Something that I specifically really liked about this one, and I'm going to refer to page 5 of this audit, and I know you might not have it in front of you, but I'll just point out what I really liked about it. I didn't necessarily see them in the other one, so I'm just trying to see why this one looked different than the others. This one, at the end of it, had a management's response to it, and then it had a responsible party.
Yes.
And then it had an implementation date, which I specifically like that because I'm big on accountability. And so I didn't necessarily see this in other audits, so I'm just trying to get a sense of what your process is and why this one has this, but the other ones don't.
It's a very, very good question. We have several tools in my toolbox that we use. We have the audit, which is what you're looking at right now. We did a full-blown audit. And we also have what we do, specialized, kind of like what the CPAs would call an agreed upon procedures audit or a review, and we do those, and they're very focused. The audits are focused too, but per the professional standards that I follow, first we can do one or the other. I determine what tool we're going to use based on the risk assessment that we do at the beginning during the planning stage. That's my hope that later you'll let me explain to you how an audit is done and you can see the different stages. So when we're doing the planning, I can say, okay, this one needs a very intense audit, full-blown audit. We need to go in there. When we do those full-blown audits, we require the departments, and it's based on the professional standards that we follow, that they provide us a response, and they provide us a responsible party, somebody that's going to be responsible. It doesn't have to be the director. Ultimately, the director's responsible for everything, but sometimes they could delegate it to a staffer to do. And then we ask them for the implementation date. The reason for the implementation date It's very important to us because I said earlier, we do follow-up audits. So we're gonna come back and follow up on these findings and recommendations. And we wanna make sure they're implemented, but we don't wanna come back too soon. So when those dates expire, I will reach out to the department and say, hey, your dates expired, are you guys ready? Can we come back in? They usually tell me, yeah, we're ready, come on. So we'll go in and we'll do it. Okay, that's one priority. The other type of project we have is like, you can refer to like agreed upon procedures, kind of a project level. We will do those to help the departments. When we finish the audit, there's no responses required, and you'll see that in the body of the report because the standards tell me I don't have to require a response. But I like to encourage the departments to respond. Why? Because I want the readers to know both sides of the story. And the readers are you, the FOAC, are the rest of the city council, and also the taxpayers. The people read our reports. I'm amazed the number of people that read them. And I tell the departments, you're encouraged to please send us a response. You'll see that right now when we talk about the pension office. They weren't required to give us one, but they did, and I encourage, give us one. There's other audits, other reviews that we've done that they're not required to based on a professional standard. But I tell them, if you'd like to, you can. I will be more than happy to include it in the audit report or in the review.
Would it be possible, in addition to getting a written response, for them to be present at our meetings? To
yes,
also be here to
I know, like right
have
now,
discussion?
I've asked, I actually talked to two reports that we're going to talk about today is on planning and inspections. I talked to Philip if he wanted, and he said, okay, I'll let you know. I never heard back from him.
Okay.
And then the other one, I have the pension office. I actually talked to Robert Ash this morning, our pension administrator, and he says, nah, I think you're good. Because the findings were, but they're not, I invite them, but they don't work for me, so I can't.
Yeah,
I can't force them to be here.
We prepared this together, and we did not have a discussion about having the staff members here, so I would just like to be consistent in terms, if we're gonna go over any reports, and those reports have been sent out to council, that our staff are prepared, whether those management comments are published or not, to be able to do that. I think we need to make sure that that is done. Also, you're seeing these reports well before the meeting, and so, you're coming to some conclusions. It's been sent out long before the staff is able to provide those comments. And so I would just love to have a process by which we can be fair to our teams in terms of what's being discussed and having them available. I don't think it's optional for my team, and if I had known that they should be here, I certainly would have had them come.
Thank you, Ms. Mack.
Thank you. And I think that's all for now. Thank you, Mr. Calderon.
You're welcome.
So I have Rep Nino, but I wanted to kind of jump in a little bit because it was related to what Rep Chavez was saying. So when you finish an audit, we could go with this one: management's response, responsible party, and then implementation date. This is the end of the audit.
No,
Okay.
because you have the follow-up part.
You have a follow-up
component
audit though.
of the first phase of the audit. Yes, it is complete.
Okay. But how, so this is going to be implemented by September 2025. When do you do the follow-up audit?
After that date.
After that date?
Yeah, we won't go in before because that wouldn't be fair. So
And-
that's why the department comes up with the date, and then we'll go in after that date has expired.
Okay, and so with this, you just kind of put it in the city manager's hands? And you say, okay, this is the implementation date, and then that's it? And then you just wait till they finish it? There's no documentation, there is no anything on that?
No, sir, because they're working on it.
Okay.
Like in this case, I'm looking at the update. We had recommended an update to their policies and procedures. When we did the audit, everything was fine. Everything was appropriate. The only thing we noticed, they had an old set of policies and procedures that were last updated in 2010. So we're 2024, 2023. It's 13 years old.
Yeah.
So we actually recommended, could you look at an update on, there might be no changes, but at least review them and provide us proof that you did review them. That way I can say, okay, you did look at it. And these reports are provided to the city manager. We make sure she gets a copy of them. We also provide copies of the report to the appropriate deputy. So when we distribute, if you ever look at your emails, you'll see there's a whole list of people that get them. And then we also submit by written, we send you a written report. We kind of do it two ways because I've had previous FOACs, some like electronic, some like written, some like both. So I just, okay, we'll just do both.
See, and I'm just thinking, as Ms. Mack said, a process would be helpful in here. And I feel that if after you finish this audit, right, like this one's finished, we could say this is a draft audit, and in the time being, we could say a month, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, something. You come up with the documentation, right, with the corrective action plan. And in that corrective action plan, you're kind of putting the details on, okay, this is the finding, and this is what we expect to hear from you, and tell us who is responsible for this, and then tell us by what date you're going to do it, and have them sign off, right? Because I think that kind of formalizes the process a lot more, so they know what expectations are clear. And then I just feel like the way it's set up right now, we're not we see that this is going to happen in September, and I would love to have a report in September to say, okay, we finished this, right? And I think that when we have a cap in as part of the process, that allows for it. And maybe you're doing kind of double work by doing a follow-up audit when the cap could just kind of do that and finish it off, right? And I think it also presents more risk, right? Because you start the audit after September, and then it takes you a few months. It could take a while, and at that point, now we don't know where it's at. I kind of want to know immediately. And then to what Rep. Chavez was saying, to her point, I also can kind of see where if we went in this format with the corrective action plan, and September, Ms. Mack could come and say, you know what, there was external forces that did not allow me to finish this by September 2025. I need another 3 months to finish that cap. And we, as the FOAC that is providing oversight on this, we have an understanding, okay, they're still on it, but they needed to request more time, right? And so I feel like a lot of that is getting lost in translation, and it almost feels like they're just kind of, okay, they're going to do this, but I don't get that report again.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about a draft of the report. We do issue a draft. We do issue a report in a stamped draft. Those are given to the department when we finish our work. We do not finalize or distribute until we get the responses. So it's in draft form. We do give the departments 10 days to formalize their response. If they need more time, we'll extend the time. If they tell me, hey, can I have a month? Yeah, fine. Just get it to me. And they'll get us the responses. Then we'll incorporate them into the audit, and then we go final, and that's when we issue the final report, and we sign off on it, and I distribute it to the FOAC. That has been our process that we followed, God, since I got here. I know when I interviewed or I talked to Weaver, we talked a little bit about it. We're going to have a second conversation on it, what I've been told. And they want to understand it a little bit more. I can pretty much guarantee you the process we follow, it's in the standards book. It's best practice. That's what we've been doing. Do we need to tweak it a little bit? Oh yeah, we can tweak that to make it more understandable to all the players. You know, I do not have a problem with that. Matter of fact, I welcome that.
Well,
let's get it shiny. We got a pretty bright penny. Let's make it a shiny penny.
And I think that obviously the standards are the quality control and all the work that you do.
Oh yeah.
And so that's important, right? And they set the bar. But if we go over that bar, I think it's perfectly fine to go over that bar because we're going above and beyond at that point, right? But see, in a world, I would kind of see it as you're in a draft form, send it to the FOAC. And we know that you're in draft form because in my head, if we do go down and we'll have information from Weaver and we'll have best practices around that, then as soon as I get that in draft form, I realize that you're about to go talk to management, right? And we can begin working on this corrective action plan
Okay.
and on what they're doing. But for example, the one that we were talking on planning and inspection, it has one recommendation,
Yeah,
right?
over the
But what
policy,
if there
so-
was 3 or 4 recommendations and one was September 2025, the next one was January 2026, and then the last 2 were June of 2026? By that point, we're not going to get something until the follow-up audit starts in the summer of 2026.
Yeah, based
So
on the
by
response.
doing that, we're increasing risk. And so that's where I feel like we need to have the corrective action plan, where it's almost like I see the corrective action plan as an agreement between you and the city manager saying, okay, here's what we need. And the city manager is saying, okay, my staff is going to do this, this, and that by these days. These are the measurements that we're going to be doing, and this is where we're going to be focusing on that. And then you can come and report to us saying, this is where they're at with the corrective action plan.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
You said you like to see the report when it's still stamped draft.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Do you want to see the draft version of the report before I get responses from the department or after I get responses from the department?
I typically am used to getting it in draft form after you've gotten responses from
Okay.
the department, because then that helps us. And then
Okay.
if we do move in this direction of the cap, and we could talk to Weaver about that, right, and kind of implement those best practices
We can make that revision.
to kind of raise that.
I don't see a problem with doing it that way.
Okay. Ms. Neiman?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to clarify for the conversation that you're having with Mr. Calderon. Are you recommending that he make these changes today? Because then I think you're gonna start seeing changes immediately. And I'm not sure that it's clear what it is that you're asking and that it's,
I think this is the start of the conversation, and I think we could deepen it at a future FOAC meeting.
but I think that you need to be real clear that he doesn't believe that you're asking him to come back and then all of the audits start changing now.
Okay.
And I don't know, I think that he's believing that you're gonna ask him to make the changes now. And I don't know that that's the direction that you're asking.
Yeah, I think it's that compiled with what Weaver is going to say. And in a future time, let's not change it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and we could continue the conversation, but do what you're doing right now, and then
Okay.
Weaver's going to strengthen it, and then we'll have something in place at some point.
Yeah, and it's not a problem once I get the responses from the departments to issue the report in draft. One of the major things that happens when you leave it in draft is it keeps the report from being an open record item. So I get it, okay? Because once we go final, it's then an open records item. So we can do that. I mean, we can have those conversations, Dr. Acevedo, now that we got a chair. So
Yeah, we could continue the conversation. Don't change what you're doing for now.
Yeah.
But we're going to strengthen it in the next few months.
Yeah, I'm all right with that.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Chair, may I respectfully
Yes.
request that while it is in draft, I have an opportunity as the supervisor of all the staff to see
Sure.
our recommendations, because I'm held
Yeah.
accountable for the results.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Thank you
think
so much.
you're an absolute important component, as is the city attorney.
Thank you.
Representative Nino, and then
Thank
I'm
you,
all right with
Chairman.
Representative, Chair, can I just ask another question? Because I think I'm
Yes.
asking more about the process. Per the internal audit charter and the city charter, the recommendations come to FOAC and then they're sent to the council for final approval and recommendation. So I think that it shouldn't be lost in this conversation about this process, when that is gonna happen, because I think that it's very unclear to me at this point when you all get these draft reports and then they get sent out to the whole organization, but you're asking about staff and the city manager's office responding. There needs to be a much more clear path moving forward in terms of coming to FOAC, getting a recommendation from FOAC thinking or saying, we think this is a complete report, or you know what, we think you need to do more work, or we don't like management's response, they need more time. And then that needs to be going to the whole council for final approval of implementation before anybody does anything. And I think that, while I think it's important that you're having that discussion today, I think that there needs to be an entire conversation about the whole process, not just these tiny bit of information and that it's clear
Yeah.
that the FOAC, I believe, is giving Mr. Calderon feedback, but I don't believe that you're telling him, go do all these things today.
Yeah,
that correct?
no, that's what I've said already.
I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that we're clear about why you're having these conversations.
Yeah, I think it's ideas, it's conversations that are good to strengthen it, but we're gonna wait. He's not gonna change anything he's doing today. It's gonna continue the same way. And once we finish with Weaver, which is probably in the next 3 months, then we'll have the broader discussion on what we're gonna implement based on what Weaver tells us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I was actually going to ask that exact same question: at what time does it become final, and what time does it go to council? So thank you for covering that. Mr. Calderon, I know that you mentioned in the hotel occupancy tax, you said that we've collected $3 million?
An additional.
An additional $3 million.
Yeah,
Was
the hotel's already paid. Our audits identified an additional $3 million.
and was that in the last fiscal year?
Oh, no, over the last several years.
Over the last several years. Okay,
these audits.
that was my only question, and Ms. Neiman already covered the question that I had in regards at what point do we take the audit to council for final approval? But thank you.
Oh,
Rep-
you're welcome.
Representative Chavez?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to reiterate what Ms. Neiman was just saying as well. Just making sure, and maybe that's the reason also that I would like to have more recurring meetings to make sure that FOAC gets to see these drafts or these finalized audits before we do take them to council, to make sure that our recommendations are discussed prior to the rest of council seeing them.
Sure. I totally understand
Thank you.
what you're asking for. And it's a revised procedure, and right now, I don't see any, I don't say violation or any conflict with any of the professional standards we follow. If you ever study the standards, they're very broad sometimes when the way they're written. Like they might say, review it with management, okay? But it doesn't tell me what level of management. That's how vague they are sometimes. Or they tell you, issue the report in a timely manner. They don't tell me what timely manner means. So we come up with a process that we have, and we have them documented in our policy manuals. So we have a very, very deep policy manual that we've developed over the years. And it's flexible. We've actually moved it around. And I know, for example, distribution of audit reports. I know when I talked to Weaver, we talked about that. And I go, look, I've been here a long time, and I've seen reports. Each FOAC is different. They would tell me, do it this way or do it this way. And I remember one time, we did not give copies. Like, if you notice now, when I release an audit report, I give it to the entire council. And I, at one time, had a process where we didn't give it to the entire council. We just kept it to the FOAC. And then we had non-FOAC council people like, why are we not getting this? And I go, I don't know. So that enhancement was made. So we've been adjusting all over the place for the last 20 years. So
But
I'm fine with it.
I think with your 20 years of vast experience, and a lot of us that are new on this committee, you know, it's an invitation to set a different standard perhaps and move
Oh,
forward
yeah.
together. And this is really just an opportunity for all of us.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah. And one time, Representative Chavez, we did not post the audit reports on the internet. We did not post them on our website. When I first started here, that was a no-no. They didn't want us to do that. Then it took one of the FOAC chairs at the time to say, yeah, we're posting them on your website. And that was, I remember that enhancement, and it was, you got a lot of people pro and a lot of people con about it, yeah, but we did it. So we've changed. We've adjusted. Let's just say we've adjusted over the years and willing to do it again. Okay.
Any more discussion on this item? Okay. Thank you for that item. Let's move to number 5. Discussion and action on FY 2024-2025 audit plan first quarter updates.
Okay. Let me call it up here. Okay. One of the things that's developed over the years has been this quarterly update. As you can see, if you go back and look at the city charter and you look at the internal audit charter, it talks about we meet quarterly. You look at the professional standards and it says I'm supposed to provide, here's one of these broad, a periodic update to the audit committee, so define periodic. So we just matched it up with the quarterly meetings that we were required to do. We can meet more often, and we have met additional meetings as necessary. And I think we're all on the same page, because I know I talked to the city manager about it at our last meeting, to schedule these FOAC meetings in advance, you know, for we can lock in the dates. We tried it last year and it didn't work. It collapsed on us halfway through the process, because I think a lot of it was driving that were the elections. And some of the FOAC people were in the middle of campaigning, and it didn't, it collapsed. So what we do here, every quarter, I provide a quarterly update. And I said earlier, the fourth quarter update, when you get that one, I'll have our performance matrix that we're required to provide them. And we provide on there. We have a bunch of charts and graphs that kind of give you some good measurements on what we're doing. But this is the first quarter, so keep in mind, this was as of November 10th, 2024. So this involved the months of September, October, and November. Okay, remember, we're now in February. So see the timeliness, how important the timeliness is to me. Keep in mind, the second quarter ends at the end of this month, at the end of February. My staff's already started working on this update and all the other documents. So we should be ready sometime mid-March to go, and then I'll talk with Dr. Acevedo and we'll try to come up with some dates. We'll survey your staff for availability. The history has been, again, and that is not documented anywhere, is usually we meet the week in between city council meetings. And it's usually on a Wednesday or a Thursday. Preferred time, 2 o'clock. Sometimes 10 o'clock. But it is not written anywhere. I mean, it's just a practice we've had. And I know in my conversations with Weaver, I told him, guys, we could lock this in. This would really, really help us, because right now it's not. We don't have it documented anywhere. So if we have a gap, there's a gap. Okay?
We'll get it locked in.
We'll get
I know work on that.
Well, that's why I'm so excited, because this is a great FOAC. Okay, so here you go. Here's a little bit of an introduction, and we actually mentioned the professional standards, and we actually tell you the excerpts. Let me get this. Here you go. From the strategic plan, we've incorporated that in here. The four areas we're going to talk about right now are completed audits and projects. The next section will be pending audits and projects, and a lot of those are already done, because remember, we're now in February, and I've done a lot of work. We've done a lot of work in the second quarter. Then we got some miscellaneous items, which is just stuff that I like to tell you about the internal audit function. And then we have the annual audit update, and I'll show you how that's built, because you'll see the annual audit plan in there divided by quarters. I know I've given everybody a copy of it, so I know it's a very complex form document, but it has my risk assessment in there, and I try to find a good model that's easy to understand. I think I have, but when I meet with the FOAC members individually, I'll be sure to go over that with you, for you can understand it. And then you can understand the audit process when I start doing the risk assessment and selecting audits for next year. Okay? So that's what this page talks about. Okay, then we'll go here to the completed audits and projects. This one, for this quarter, we only had 2. We already talked about the planning and inspections permit review. I'm very happy to report to the FOAC that the department's operating in very good order. Permits are getting issued timely. I don't want to say they're being issued within 24 hours, because that's not how it works over there, but they're getting out timely, and they're charging the correct fees. They're well documented, so going really well. I mean, I didn't see any issues there in the permit. The issue we did see was their policies and procedures they're outdated and a little vague. Things have changed in the last 13, 14 years with them. So the last update we had was in 2010. So we actually recommended, you see it in the report, for them to update their policies and procedures. Little bit of background, an auditor's job is not to write them for them. I cannot write the updates for them. I can talk to them, things that we see, but that's a management function, and I have to maintain my independence and my objectivity. So I kind of leave that to the department to handle, and they can talk to their bosses and come up with new procedures, and then we'll review it again once the implementation date expires. But that would be subject to change. I think we're going to change that a little bit, and then again we'll change the draft. We'll leave it in draft a little bit longer. It's not a problem. I mean, and then we'll go there. So,
Before we move on to the next one, I did have a few questions on this specific audit.
Okay.
So you kind of looked through and said that they're doing permits in a timely manner, but what is a timely manner defined as?
good question. Depending on the complexity of the plan or the permit they're going to issue, they're all different. There's no one size fits all there. Some plans for, let's say, a building, a little bit more complex than maybe a home, and it takes a little bit longer to review. Okay.
So there's no average day or anything. It just depends on what it is.
Yes, and we didn't see no huge outliers like 24 months. We didn't see outliers like that. They all seem to be very reasonable and very logical. So as your auditor, I did not see a problem with the data we reviewed.
Okay.
We have a dashboard and KPIs, so you're able to see per permit type what our goal is, and we also report out when it's extended beyond those times. There are a lot of varieties of types of reviews that they might be doing, but those are well categorized for the team, and they give themselves a certain number of days per section. And so, you know, I just text the department head. I mean, that would have been helpful to have, you know, as a part of the process and a part of our report, and we would love to be able to do that in the future.
No, thank you. And one thing that I liked from the management's response is that there's 40 types of permits, and that sounds kind of insane. And trying to kind of get those down and mix those and kind of consolidate those to make it a little easier is better. I'm asking these questions because this is something that I get in my office every so often on the length of getting the permit. And I know every permit is a little different, but I feel like there's some businesses that are out there that might be saying, you know what, I'm trying to open my new business and now I'm losing money because the city can't. And we're working hand in hand with the city. But I mean, there was one about a year ago that it was taking forever to get a permit for a sign, for the business sign. And so that is kind of my worry on how we could be more efficient. It made me think, is there staffing issues? Are we short-staffed in this department as well that are handling those permits?
We can bring forth an operational report to really show you what the numbers look like, what are the types, maybe what have been the outliers in some areas. What we're often finding is that some of those businesses are having some issues with getting their inspections done, or sometimes it's a fire marshal issue, and so there are some complex things. Some of the permits they do are very simple. You know, they're the ones who also are responsible for, you know, special events. You know, like you say, there's a lot of different things. I think a lot of it has to do with the plan reviews that we do for new builds and things like that, that we spend a lot of time trying to ensure that those are pretty quick and a good turnaround for. But I can have that report come back to council.
And just one last thing, something that is more alarming to me that I've kind of heard in the community from subcontractors or even the joke around subcontractors, whether it's people that I've heard from directly in the community, seeing the chatter online, is that there's kickbacks that are happening. And I don't have any evidence of that, and I won't act without evidence, but I think that's something that we really need to look at, because that's really concerning to me. And I think that that's kind of happening where people are really frustrated with how long the process is, and then they're paying somebody else just to get it done. And there was one person that I spoke to that said, if the city was able to expedite it and they charged a $5,000 fee, I would pay the $5,000 to get it immediate, because now that I've been waiting for the last month, I'm losing all that money every day, right? So I think, and that person was saying, I would rather do it the legal way than having to pay somebody off just to get that permit. So I really wanted you to be alerted to that and see if that's something that you also find.
So I did have the conversation regarding folks taking payments within planning and inspections, and I actually spoke to Mr. Calderon about it, and I think one of the things we talked about was really pushing out the hotline and letting people know that there are ways to be able to report anything they see in the community. I think that's the best way to sort of talk about, doing an investigation. Some of what we've been hearing is people are not willing to provide their names, feeling that, they might be targeted or something, but if I don't have a name to investigate, it's difficult for us to go out and assign an investigator if no one's willing to give their address or their name and be associated with it, so we can really figure out what's going on.
Okay, no, I'm glad you're on it, and I think just overall, 15 years of not looking at these policies is really refreshing to see that this is going to be updated, and then I think we could really strengthen the fee schedule as this is kind of going through if needed, just on that feedback that you're hearing, to make sure that there are controls in place to avoid a lot of the risk that might be happening inadvertently because of what process is in place.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to add something to that, Dr. Acevedo. As your auditor, I'm not supposed to take sides. I'm supposed to be the neutral guy in the room, right? But I can tell you, in our review of the data and of the timeline of permits coming in, a lot of times it's not our staff. They'll have a permit. I'll give you a good example. They'll have a permit. They need, I don't know, some report from the electrician. And they tell us, if you bring that back to us, we'll get it done. We just need that one little piece of paper from the electrician. And the owner of the project doesn't come back for a couple weeks, and they're waiting. So, of course, they put it to the side because they got to keep working. And a lot of it, when we did see delays, it wasn't delays caused by our people. It was caused by delays from the owner or the contractor or even the subcontractor in getting required documents back to our plan review people to issue the permit. So that just happens. Now, on the issue of asking for money and stuff, I agree with the city manager. Some people they'll call me on the hotline. It happens every so often, but they're not willing to come up. And when they do come up, we refer that to law enforcement. I'm required by my charter to advise the city manager and the city attorney when I have that, and those are referred to law enforcement. So for their investigation, because it's not, at that point, it's not my place to investigate that I have to step back.
Yeah. Well, thank you for providing that context.
No, I'm just get a full disclosure.
Representative Chavez?
I was going to comment the same thing. Thank you, Chairman. I was going to comment the same thing. Many times when you're expecting an inspection to be done or a certain permit, you have to get a different permit before that in order to get the next one. And so sometimes there are delays for different reasons, which you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to measure the timeliness of something when every circumstance is different.
Every
Business model is different.
There's no two the same.
Exactly.
Okay. Can I go to the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay, the next completed project we did, and this was again an advisory project we did for the pension office, the retirement trust for the city of El Paso. This is the civilian pension fund, okay, not the police, not the fire. So please don't get those confused. Now, the objective we got from we worked out with the City of El Paso Employees Retirement Trust was to review the process for, they were digitizing employee records. Keep in mind, just look at it like a big giant box, a banker's box full of papers. When an employee retires and he submits all this paperwork. Well, what the pension trust was or has begun to do is to digitize this, and a lot of online processing and data entry that they do. I know I just went through it with Social Security. I'm aging myself, but they do it. Social Security does a lot of stuff online. So you inquire, you can just go online. I mean, that's how the federal government is working. So Robert Ash and his staff over at the Pension Trust is starting this process. So they asked us if we could go ahead and review the validity of the data transfer from paper to digital. And did they capture all the forms? Are they all in there? Are they accurate? Are they complete? Then when they scanned them in, you only got the top portion of the form and not the bottom portion. So we took that. I said, yep, this we can do. My crew is trained for this. So what we did, we completed 2 tests. In auditor's language, we had a completeness test and we had an accuracy test, okay? So one of the things we did, we took a sample of 30 retirees' records found in the PTG system. That's the system that they're using. And what we did, we traced those 30 records from the system to the paper document. Randomly. We selected a random sample. I'm happy to report that review was 100% accurate. All the records were in there. Okay, well, now to keep them honest, we did it reverse. We did from the hard copy into the system. We already went from the system to the hard copy because they still have paper files over there, so that was easy to do. So now we went from the paper files back into the system. So we picked a sample of 15 records, and happy to report 100% accurate. Those records were in the system. So we went both ways. It's like doing an inventory. If you're an old account, you remember you go from the sheet to the floor, and then you go from the floor to the sheet and the paper. And that's what we did here. And we found both reviews to be 100% accurate. I was very, very pleased with the results. So we reported that to the pension trust. I think I might be having to do a presentation to the pension board. Don't know yet. Mr. Ash was still sorting everything out. I know in the past I have reported to the pension board, so I'll let everybody know if I'm going to be asked to present the results of the review to the pension board. But that's a pretty simple project. It took us a long time because they were still finalizing the digitization. Then the digitization company got sold to another company. It was just like you couldn't make the stuff up, and we had to let the dust settle. So when it settled, we were able to do the review, and we found it to be accurate, 100%. So you can rest assured there. So, any questions on the pension? Okay. Next thing we do. This go around, I'm just going to give you information on the hotline on numbers. I'm not going to give any detail. I'm waiting for the Weaver recommendations. I've shared everything with them. I've shared our policies and procedures manual that we have for the hotline that we've created. But more important, I know a lot of you weren't in office then. Our previous external auditing firm, Moss Adams, had done their annual report, and in that report they recommended in that report that we share information with the FOAC chair. So I started doing it. I started sharing it at that time with the FOAC chair at the time, and then the FOAC chair instructed me, well, just share it with the entire FOAC. So we started doing that. We've kind of stopped that right now, waiting. When I meet with you individually, I can talk to you about it, and we can chit chat about that, and I can tell you how that works. But right now, we're just giving you counts. So during the first quarter of 2024, 2025, the hotline received 8 calls. We had 8 calls coming in. And as of November 30th, 2024, only 1 call remained open. And that, I believe that one's already closed. But that's where, question I think you'll ask, how many calls do you get? On the average, about 60 a year. We get calls on the hotline. So, and then plus we also get, I can't tell you the week that it's happened that I haven't had an employee call me directly to my desk and ask me around about some ethical dilemma they might be experiencing. So we'll talk it out. And I told them, you want to file a report, you're more than welcome to. I can't stop you. That's your right. But more of the time after we talked to them a little bit, and that's what I was telling Weaver, they're okay because they understand the process. Because I explain it to them and they go, oh, okay. So is nothing wrong? Nah, nothing wrong. Travel requests have to get approved. Well, why do I have to look at all my receipts? Because you're spending taxpayer money. Oh yeah, right, yeah. So that's why we look. So you get, because they're wrestling with this dilemma in their head, and they kind of think they're picking on me. And I go, no, they're not picking on you. That's our policy. They have to be reviewed. Oh, okay, so I'm okay? Yeah, you're okay. Okay, bye. And they leave. And so that's what happens.
And I think that we'll be able to strengthen this with Weaver in the next few months. And so I think this is appropriate
and
for
all of those are
today.
documented.
Yeah.
All those are documented, Dr. Acevedo, because people ask me, well, how do you know? Because we keep records. We have records. And I invited Weaver, come on over. We'll show you the records. Because nothing's done in a silo. I've learned over the years, especially with a hotline, you got to keep records because you just never know what's going to come out of that complaint. So we'll do that. Okay, so that takes care of the hotline. Tax office refund reviews. You'll see those in your agenda, the city council agenda. And I cannot explain it, why people overpay on their property taxes, but they do. And sometimes they double pay, and sometimes they overpay, they round up. And unfortunately, our tax office can't keep that round up money, they have to return it. And by state statute, that money has to be returned to the taxpayers. But also by state statute, those refund requests have to be reviewed by the governing body's auditor, me. I just inherited it. As I don't know if that you understand, but we're actually the only city in the state of Texas that collects property taxes. Everybody else in the state, the county, collects the taxes. We assumed that role, I believe, in the 70s, and the cities had that responsibility since then. So we collect the property taxes. So because of that, we've inherited all the requirements that's required by state statute, and one of them is the audit of those refunds. And every week we get a stack. Every week. I mean, it's rare that we don't get one, but some vary in numbers we get. But all those are reviewed by us, and you can rest assured when you see them on your agenda, they've been reviewed by my office. Okay. Oh, and then in this case, for the first quarter, we had 21 tax office refund requests. Okay. That completes the section on work that we completed. Next, I'd like to go to page 5. Oops. These are pending. This is stuff that are audits projects that we're working on. Some of these are already complete because remember, this report's as of November. So we've been working through December, January, so some of these are already done. But you'll see the reports you've already gotten. You should have already gotten them. Matter of fact, I have one in my desk right now that I need to send to you. And I'll tell you about that in a second. First one that we have pending, we're still working on it, is an accounts receivable on the hotel occupancy tax. Over the years, we've identified several hotels that are past due that still owe the city additional hot tax. We're reviewing that list of receivables to see what status they are. The city attorney's office is a huge help on this. I mean, I don't think this could have ever been successful without them, because at the end, if the hotel doesn't pay, we identify it, we transfer it over to the comptroller's office, they bill it, they collect it, but sometimes you get a difficult hotel that doesn't want to pay, and I know they're referred to the city attorney's office, and there's this whole process that takes place to collect that tax that's due. So we're looking at that. We're just confirming the numbers, so I'll be able to, once we get to the end of this, I'll be able to provide you with a good number of what's still owed to the city once we get there. Next, we have an audit scheduled over in the Parks and Recs Department. That's on the park usage permits. We're right in the middle of that. We're finding out the process that's being used on issuing permits to use a city park, and we'll be reporting out on what we find out on that one. Okay. Third, we have an accounts payable audit over at the airport, and this is pretty normal for us to do, because we'll do accounts payable audits and departments, because the city has a decentralized accounts payable process. What I mean by that, each department pays their own bills. We don't have a centralized accounts payable function in the comptroller's office that does that. If they did, they'd probably need about 60 more people. Think about every city department. So right now it's decentralized. The departments pay their own bills. I've been working with Margarita on this, and she's actually, as told me, I need more of these. I need you to do more accounts payable audits. So I said, okay, we'll work on it and try to squeeze in a little bit more in there. But we'll be going to different city departments and checking to see how they pay their bills. And there's a whole checklist that has to be done. Okay, and then, oops. Next, we have an audit we're doing over in capital improvement, and this is for on-call services. These are for professional services that are provided to capital improvement on the capital improvement projects. Usually that involves like maybe architectural services, engineering services. They have an approved list. They get it approved by council, so you'll probably be seeing those in the future when it's time to update. And you'll see maybe half a dozen engineering firms. And these are firms that are approved by council, and the city engineer will decide, okay, usually it's on a round robin, who's ever next gets the next one, and they'll get the next contract to look at, I don't know, a rec center or a library we're building or whatever we're gonna build. And they actually review those, they get those, and then they get the bill, and then they pay it. But then they get the services, they get the report, whatever, the architectural report, the engineering report. So that's what we're checking. We're checking on all of that. My auditor's already finished. She's given me some finding worksheets, so I'm working on reviewing those. Next, on number 5, we had also started doing a series of what we like to call internal control reviews. It's not a full-blown audit like I described earlier. These are a little bit more condensed or quicker for us to do. We can go in and do a quick review, and we review their internal controls on how they collect money, how they take care of the money, how they deposit the money, how they pay bills, anything involved with money. And we've done 2, and matter of fact, one has already been issued, because I know I distributed to you. We did an internal control review in the Department of Public Health. That went very well with them, and I already met with Vinny and talked to him about the results, and very, very good process over the health department. Next one we have is, I know it's kind of sad to even talk about it because of what happened yesterday, Submetro. We had spent some time at Submetro, did an internal control review. Same thing we did in the health department, looking at how they collect money, but they collect a lot more money. Just think of a bus. People are putting money in the fare box and buying advance tickets. So there's a lot of money being collected. So we review those. So I have that report ready to go, and I'll hopefully distribute it. If not today, I'll do it in the morning.
And that room is just called the money room? There's okay. I thought it was a weird name.
No,
It's
called the
very
money room.
literal.
It's-
Okay. And
I won't tell you where it's at because I don't want the bad.
No, it's okay.
publicity.
It's
But
okay.
it's a big room and they count money.
okay.
And
Okay.
It's, so yeah.
I have some discussion, Representative Chavez.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Calderon, this is just a technical request.
Yes.
Would it be possible for you to maybe make a slideshow next time? Only because I really can't read what's on the screen. I have to follow what you're saying on paper, and then I can't look at you while you're speaking. So just, if you could put it on a slideshow, I would appreciate it.
Okay. We'll have to meet because I'll have to figure out how you want it.
Just something that's more visible so that we can follow what you're
Okay.
saying, and I don't always have to be looking down,
Sure.
if that would be okay.
We'll
It doesn't
come up
have
with
to
something.
be,
We'll come up with a fix.
yes, thank you, sir.
We'll come up with something.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Okay.
Representative Nino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Calderon. Quick question, Mr. Calderon. I know that, some of these audits, pretty much, I would say they're complete. We received a response from staff saying and thanking you for your hard work. But I know that there's some audits that do have some recommendations and that you're going to be visiting again, right?
Yes.
My question is, and we kind of mentioned that you will be visiting it in 2026. So does the follow-up become part of your next year audit plan?
It all depends when I schedule it. If you look at this year's audit plan, you'll see some follow-ups have already been scheduled for this year.
Okay.
And then usually what happens, audits that we complete this year will more than likely, depending on the date, the implementation date will happen next year.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it's a cycle.
And the reason I'm asking is I was just trying to follow up because I know that it says complete audit, and I'm trying to make sense of a complete audit versus a follow-up. At what point, I know earlier I asked, when does it become a final product? Because we're going to be revisiting it, if that makes sense. I don't know if my question is clear to you.
No, I kind of lost you.
Okay, so what I'm saying is you're making recommendations, right? And you're going to revisit and do another audit. Is that audit a separate audit? Since we're considering one audit that's complete?
Yes, it's a separate report that I will issue on the follow-up.
Okay, yeah, that was my question.
You have the original audit report that you see, and then when I do the follow-up, there'll be a separate formal
complete
report.
separate report.
And then we'll give you the status on the implementation of our recommendation.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you haven't seen one yet because I don't have one yet to post. You're welcome.
And I think just going back to what Representative Chavez was saying, I think the backup is good, but if we did do a presentation, I think it presents information in a different way for the public, right? Because I'm just thinking of somebody at home right now and they're watching on YouTube and they just see the page on
Sure.
there. I think a presentation, and it's really similar to what all our departments do
Yeah.
with the same slideshow. I think that would be helpful. So thank you for bringing that up, Rep. Chavez.
Mr. Chair, we'll get with Mr. Calderon and go through some of the ADA requirements, because I think the concern is that
Yeah.
the public needs to be able to read the information as we're relaying it online. And we have ADA requirements for our presentation, so that as the public is watching, they can see the presentation, and it's hard to read that document as it's currently stated, but we'll work through that.
No, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. ADA is very, very
Absolutely.
important, so
Thank you.
Yeah.
we need to make sure.
First time ever. The first time I heard this. We can fix that.
Okay. And I'll give you some ideas too, and Rep. Chavez will give you
Yeah,
ideas.
I mean,
We'll all work it out.
I'm an open book. Whatever we need to make it better and make it easier for everybody to understand. You know, every FOAC has great ideas, and we will get there. That I promise you. Okay. Next, this one I already see. I can put this on a slide. I'm already thinking. On page 6, you'll see we just mentioned the last FOAC meeting we had, which was on November the 14th, and these are the agenda items, so that's pretty easy. On page 7, you'll see the miscellaneous items. We actually list our training, the amount of training we do. I'm a firm believer in training. I train, and I retrain. I cannot have the audit staff tell me, hey boss, I've never been trained on that. So I try to anticipate on current practices, best practices out there, current events, and we train up because when something happens, I can't tell you, well, I need 6 months to train the staff to be able to address it, because you're not gonna like that. You're gonna tell me, we need you to address it now. And a good example is back in 2015 when we had a cyber attack. Thank God we were ready. And my staff was fully trained to address the cyber attack. The next thing we have is service to the profession. A lot of my staff participates in professional groups in El Paso and regionally and nationally. Like I belong to the Association of Government Accountants, the El Paso chapter. 2 of my auditors are on the board for the Institute of Internal Auditors, the El Paso chapter, and 2 of my auditors are on the board for the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. So that's where we're at. Page 8, you'll see the update to the audit plan. This is the approved audit plan that got approved last November. And I actually break it down by quarters, but you'll see the first quarter, you'll see the budgeted hours, okay? And then you'll see the year-to-date hours that we spent on the individual part. Now, we haven't touched everything, okay, because we're working on the first quarter. But keep in mind, sometimes we'll, oh, thanks, Mike. And keep in mind that some days we'll, or we will go to the next quarter because the auditor I have available might be skilled in that area. So I might jump ahead and go into the next quarter, like you can see I did here already. And then on the audit plan, you'll see at the end of each quarter, we have administrative time and for our administrative duties that my office has, and then training, and of course, my auditor's like a vacation day every once in a while or some holiday time, so we'll do that. So I'll leave that to your reading pleasure. So look at that. If you have any questions, let me know. And that's
we have a question from Representative Maldonado Rocha.
Yes.
Mr. Calderon, thank you very much for providing the audit plan update. A quick question on the year-to-date number, because I know budgeted hours are based off of regular time. Does the year-to-date include any overtime?
All my auditors are salaried,
Okay, perfect.
so they don't
Thank
get
you.
paid overtime.
Okay.
They might put in the extra time
Sure.
to get the project done, but there's no additional compensation for them.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. It's a good
And
question.
I had some questions.
Sure.
The first, I was looking at your contingency hours.
Yes.
There's 404 budgeted,
Mhm.
but then everything under that, audit plan, consulting, division, etc., is part of the 404, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And so far, you're at 616.25 hours when you add all those up, and you only budgeted 404. So I was, one, concerned that you're way over in that sense, and then two, I wanted to get an understanding of why the audit plan took 543 hours to complete or spent on that.
A lot of that was in preparation for the Weaver review,
Okay.
because we were reviewing our audit plan and all associated schedules and documents we have with the audit plan, because some of the requests I received from Weaver was regarding the audit plan. So we were just reviewing it, making sure we had everything up to date, which we did. We're just trust and verify is my philosophy. So we're verifying. So that's where we're going, sir.
And I think one thing that because then I see 5 hours spent on Weaver, but it seems like you spent a lot more hours on Weaver for the audit plan. So I don't think that's illustrating the exact numbers. So if you could denote it in a better way, I understand what you were doing, but when I look at this, it was only 5 hours that you spent with Weaver, you know?
When we go into the second quarter update, Dr. Acevedo, you will see the Weaver hours jump dramatically.
Okay.
Because in my office and with my senior auditors, we've created, I don't know, we called it the Weaver team. And we were getting ready with all the other requests that they gave us. They gave us a bunch, and we were preparing. We met with them on February the 7th, so we were getting ready for that. So you will see next month you'll see a vice versa. I mean next month, that's hopefully we meet next month, but you'll see a reversal on audit hours, and you'll jump. And yeah, the contingency, I'll tell you right now, it's never enough hours.
Yeah,
You
no,
know?
and I get that. And I get that there's stuff that comes up in contingency, but I'm also really, for lack of a better term, protective of contingency because, you know, we could be doing other things or whatever that happens. So I completely understand that. But I think in the next report that you're going to give us for the second quarter, what I would really appreciate is how many hours of the audit plan went to Weaver. And I know you said Weaver's going to increase dramatically in the
Yeah,
next
because
one,
we got-
but I just want to have that also understanding on
Sure.
specific audit plan, Weaver, how many hours was that?
We'll go back and take a look at it because we keep a good description on the work we did, and then we can reallocate the hours out of audit plan and stick them on the Weaver side. Because remember, this is as of November. November, we weren't really going into deep into Weaver because the contract with Weaver wasn't, I think, till November. So we didn't know their scope and objectives or what they were going to be looking at. Then we got their request for documentation, and that really started in December. So December, January, February, they're going to be huge. I just want to let you know now the hours
Okay.
are going to be up there.
No, that sounds good. And then I had a few other things on this. I see a lot of carry forwards, and I understand why that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also thinking with what is happening with your contingency hours this year, I want to have an idea when your next report where you see that you might need to move certain audits to the next year or not focus on them this year. I need that because it's very clear to me that you're not going to get through the 14 new audits that were added on top of the ones that were carried over from the prior year. And I want to know that.
Yeah.
If you could give us that.
Yeah, I can tell you in 40 years that I've been an auditor and working with audit plans, I've never finished an audit plan. It just doesn't happen.
No, and it is normal.
Yeah, it's normal, and it's expected. And then that's why we have the carryovers. And then what you see here on the carryovers, I actually did some research on this because I anticipated this question. And a lot of it was because we had already issued the reports, but we were still in our quality control. So as you can see, some of the hours, 26 hours, 16 hours, 43 hours. It wasn't a lot. It was a week's worth of work, but we were involved in quality control at that time. You know, we have a process that we debrief the audit, and then we see the good, the bad, and the ugly of the audit, and then we try to do it better next time. Some of them we did carry over, like the pension digitization and some Metro Money when we had started them the fourth quarter of the prior year, but we just didn't finish them. So we finished them here, and as you can see, we had budgeted 50. We went a little bit over, but that was because of not only finishing the work, but also our quality control, where we review our work papers to make sure they're
But then
in
if you
tip-top shape.
then once we have that understanding, I think we can deprioritize some and kind of direct in that sense, prioritize this over the other ones. And as we're kind of getting into the conversations in the next few months for next year's audit plan, I think that it comes at a good time.
Yeah, and that's a conversation I usually will have with the FOAC chair, telling them, okay, here's the ones we're not going to quite get to. We're going to have to carry them over. And what I usually do at that time, I do a risk assessment. Again, I risk them out. And if the risk changed, it might drop. They might drop off. But then if the risk haven't changed or have increased, they will definitely carry over. And especially we've already started the audit. We got to finish it. We got to finish it out.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I didn't mention when we were approving the minutes earlier, but it's related to the audit plan, so I wanted to bring that up, is on the last 2 pages of the audit plan, attachment number 6, I had specifically asked if you could include the dates
Yes.
The years that
Already
would be
done.
there? Okay, so if we could have that updated for the next month so we could kind of amend it
Yes, sir.
and make it official, I
Already
would
done.
appreciate that. And then a few questions around the P card reviews. Something that I see is interviewees would like more P card reviews. So can you tell me more about what you're doing there?
Okay, could you repeat the question on the P cards?
On the audit plan, it says interviewees would like more P card reviews. So can you tell me what that means a little bit more in detail?
I get, in conversations that I have with Margarita, because I'm constantly talking to her, you can ask her. And I hear that. More P card reviews, more AP reviews. She's very focused on the financial aspects of the government and constantly asking me for more of that type of review. But then I also get that specific request. I've gotten it from previous FOAC members that would want us to do more P card review. Now, we do a P card review. We've already started it on city council. And we do that and on the city manager's office and her staff. It's been a recurring audit we do every year for the last 18 years. So because of that, I've gotten requests from different sources for more P card reviews.
Okay, and so those would be for the last year, the last 2 years?
Yeah, like the one for city council and the city manager, we actually cut off the date as of December of 2024.
Okay.
Because that's when the old council, so it's really gonna focus on the previous council. Because this council group, you just got here. You don't have a lot of activity. You've been here January, part of February, there's not a lot of activity. So when I risk it out and I'm looking at the high-risk areas, to me, that's the high-risk area. The previous council, because they've been here a while, they've had it for a while. A lot of times that I've seen it before, they're leaving office and purchases happen that, are kind of in the gray area.
Okay, so it's just for the calendar year 2024?
Actually, it's from the previous audit to 2024, so it's about a year and a half, because we usually would do them as of August 31st. That's when we would cut off the P card review. But since we had the previous council leaving in December, I made the decision based on my evaluation of risk, let's do those extra 4 months.
And you've been doing it for 18 years?
These reviews, yes, sir.
Okay. And then the other thing that I had was the executive vacation request and sick leave project.
Yes.
Is that the same time frame as well?
Yes, sir, but I think me and you need to have a conversation about that one. 'Cause
Okay.
that is not going the way I wanted it to go.
Okay.
So I need to have a conversation with you when we meet on that one. I'm gonna need direction.
Okay. Okay, I'm happy to talk through on that, and then I think this kind of helps us as we look at the next quarter report to see what needs to be amended for the audit plan. And I mean, as you know, this is a living document, right? So we could amend it
moves
throughout the year, and we might have to do some of that, and then include the years.
Yeah, because
that-
I'm already getting requests from city management. They're wanting additional audit work done, and I said, okay, we got the contingency hours, we can use those hours. So we need to evaluate that. We had, and I need another conversation I need to have with you. We had one audit we started, and I'm gonna have to pull back and not cancel it, but postpone it for a future date. So that's gonna make that chunk of audit hours available for something else.
Okay.
So that's the conversation. So I'm so happy that we got the FOAC going again, because I need that avenue to talk through it and with the FOAC chair, and then eventually with the FOAC,
Sure.
I think.
Sure. Ms. Neiman, did you have something? Or Ms. Mack? No, sorry. Okay.
Just on the management.
I just saw microphones moving, so I was like,
Just
didn't-
on the management side, just to ensure that we have one consistent message, I'm gonna work with all the department heads as well as senior leadership, and we'll have one series of recommendations so we can ensure that we're on the same page in terms of what might be moving forward, because we don't have recollection of some of the recommendations
Okay.
that are moving
I
forward.
think that's great, and
Thank
then
you.
we could integrate that with Weaver as well, and
thank you.
have those conversations. Thank you. I have Rep. Maldonado Rocha. Sorry for making you wait.
No, that's okay. I'm very patient. But it was all good information, so thank you, Chairman. Mr. Calderon, just a quick question, and it's for my own understanding. What is the year? Does it follow a fiscal year? I understood it's from September to August. That's the fiscal year that's followed?
Yes.
Yeah?
That's the audit plan.
The audit
follows that
plan,
fiscal
right?
year. Yes, ma'am.
So my question would go into, we're in what quarter are we in at this point?
Second quarter right now.
Second quarter, right? My question would be, going into the third quarter, I see that there's already hours,
Yes.
but it says as of 11:30. So are these hours as of 11/30/24?
Yes.
Okay. What's that? Right, but this is third quarter. So third quarter already shows hours.
Yes.
How is that?
Because these are, remember I mentioned earlier, we will be having another external quality assessment
Right.
done in 2026.
Right.
So my auditor that I've assigned to this, well, there's one going to be operating yellow and one's going to be operating
The red, right?
They've already started their pre-planning
Okay.
to start getting these reviews done.
So the review is, the audit plan is in the third quarter, but the work is already happening now.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's
thank
what
you.
is, you can also, and it's also happened in the second quarter.
Right, I saw
So
that
remember,
too.
we were biting in on the second quarter.
Yeah.
For we were looking at take-home cars
Right.
and use of city vehicles. And then we did a little bit of work on the executive vacation request, and we did
Mm-hmm.
a lot more work on the parks permit.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate it. I think for me, it was a little misleading, and it's just an opportunity for me to understand.
Yeah.
When I see it in the second quarter and the third quarter, I assume that the work is getting done in the second and the third quarter. And so that's when I expect the hours to be completed. So it was a moment of clarification for me.
And that's fair, because, yes, I can understand why you would
Thank
see
you.
it that way. But the audit, my staff, they don't juggle just one project.
No, I know. I know.
I wish I could just give them one at a time. They wish they could get one at a time. But most of my staff, and you're free to ask them, they're juggling 2-3 different audits projects at a time. So they're doing a little bit here, a little bit there, a little
Right.
bit there, and they're trying to move them along.
No, I appreciate that.
And
I just wanted it for my own benefit,
Yeah.
a clarification point to understand that even though the audit plan shows they will be completed in those respective quarters, the work is already happening now.
Yeah.
And so this has already been, this was as of November 30th,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
And our goal is to try to get these done in the
Sure.
quarter they've been listed.
Sure.
But reality and my plan sometimes don't match up, and they cross over, and that's what we just talked with Dr. Acevedo about, the carryovers.
Right.
And sometimes we'll get the report out, but we still have to finish our quality
Right.
review and review our work papers and make sure our files are shiny penny. We want the shiny penny. And so it does cross over that end of quarter
Sure.
date. And that's just the nature of the business.
Okay, I do appreciate it. I think for my own benefit, I'm gonna need to try to find a way to keep track
Yeah.
of when the work's done, in which quarter, and then to complete it. But I appreciate it.
Yeah, and-
Thank you, Mr. Calderon.
And I think you'll see it more as we go on to the next
Sure.
quarters, and you'll start getting a better grasp of how the process works.
I do appreciate that, and I look forward to it. So thank you all.
Thank you for this item. There was a lot of good discussion, and appreciate everything that everyone said. Let's move on to the final item on the agenda. Thank you to everybody who is indulging us
I know.
almost at 3
I
hours.
thought it was
But
going to be a short.
every time you think it's
Wrong.
a short one, it's a long one.
Yes, exactly.
So
This one's easy. This one's fast.
item number 6 is the discussion
Oh,
on
action.
client surveys.
No, you have to accept number 5.
Oh, that's right. Sorry,
discussion
I'm
and
sorry. We
action
have action.
to
Motion
accept
to approve?
the update.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on number 5. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Passes unanimously.
Okay. And then the last thing we have is just discussion on client surveys.
Yes, number
Just,
6.
I'm a big believer in customer service. We have a department motto that we want to, I think Carla.
Ms. Neiman?
I just have a procedural question. The FOAC just took action on the fiscal year 2024-2025 audit plan. What is the action that you all are taking?
To approve the first quarter updates?
Okay, and then what happens to the document after today?
I guess we could add some more direction on what we were discussing.
I think that it
That's a good
merits a
point.
conversation about why you have action items on an audit plan when many of these items are still pending, right? And I think that there needs to be a conversation about if it's a fourth quarter audit plan, there was a lot of information that was covered, and I don't know that I would recommend that you take action on it, right? Because I think it leaves a lot of questions to be answered about, well, what are we taking action on? Because there's a bunch of pending stuff. So I think that moving forward, it would be wise to have a conversation about why certain items are placed as action and not others. And I don't know that it's a best practice to do that. And I would just recommend that you take that into consideration at the next meeting, and then when we draft the agenda, that we have those conversations with Mr. Calderon.
And what to
Right.
include as action
Right.
or just discussion?
Correct.
Just
Okay,
action?
so,
No, I don't think that this audit plan requires action because there's so many things
Just discussion?
that are still pending.
Okay.
And I mean, even the first two audit reports are still pending based on what Mr. Calderon explained, right?
so I think if we could rescind the motion on this, if somebody can bring it back.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And so that passes unanimously. We'll rescind the motion. We will not take action on
Just
this.
Discuss it.
And it'll be just a discussion item for today. And then, Ms. Neiman, some of the recommendations that we threw out on there, should we take action on those recommendations? Or is it okay that Mr. Calderon has taken notes on that and he'll bring that back with and work with me for the next agenda?
I think that for the time being, it's okay if he works with you, but I think that we need to be a little bit more methodical about the items as they're placed, and then what items need action from the board that are gonna go to council.
Okay.
And what items are just gonna be presented for an update.
Okay.
And that likely also that they're not done in quarterly form because there's so many of them, right? But I think we'll be able to address that if there's opportunity to have more recurring meetings, and then what items are placed on those meetings.
Okay, that works.
Thank you.
So you have a lot of feedback, and then you and I
I
can,
know.
can discuss that and sit down on what we'll
Yeah.
do for the next one. Okay?
We'll work it out. Yeah, because we've always, when we do the quarterly updates, we've always done it. We've done it like this for years. This is the first time ever,
Yep.
kind of, but which I'm fine with it. And then we just going forward, I'll work with Juan Gonzalez because he usually helps us with the agenda, and we'll just put it in for discussion only. We won't put any action on it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Neiman, for that advice. Thank you, Mr. Calderon. So
Okay.
no action on number 5. Let's move on to number 6, discussion on client surveys.
Yeah, the client surveys, we survey every client at the end of the audit. We send out a survey to everybody that we came in contact with. And could be the director, the assistant director, the staff person. I want to know how the auditor did. I am huge on customer service. I always have been everywhere I've worked as an auditor. You know, it's like people sometimes don't like us. We understand we're the auditors, but I want to make sure my auditors are acting professional when they're out there, are receptive to the client's needs and feelings, because sometimes they're nervous because they're might be the first time they've ever been audited, and so I like to know how they're doing. We've done pretty well over the years. If you were here in the fourth quarter, we actually recapped this data for the entire year, and I think we're averaging about 3.6, 3.7 on the average score. It goes from a 1 to a 4. So we do pretty good, and so I actually put him here for the FOAC to look at, because I want everybody to see. And we get some pretty good responses from, or survey results, where we're rated excellent by the client. And then we get some comments, so every single one of them is here. And I think I just put this one for discussion, so there's no action taken, but they're there, and I just want to be fully transparent with these, and you can see how the staff performs when they're dealing with the departments. And it's amazing. I sometimes get calls from the department heads, and they just say, thank you for what you did. I mean, just thank you. Just, you helped us. You know, we didn't know that was a slip and fall. So thank you for helping us and working with us. And I've never, like I said earlier, I'm not that type of auditor that got you. I'm not the I topped you. And I remember when I got hired here, I told them, is that what you want? Then you need to keep looking, because that's not the way I work. You know, I just don't do that. And we work with the clients. And do we ever get a sour review? Yeah, we've seen one every so often. And I'll work with it and figure out what went wrong, and we'll do it. But
And I think that's the importance, right, of supporting the governance. Your department
Yes.
supports the governance that we have for our city government. So,
yeah, I need to know how
Yeah.
we're doing.
yeah, so any discussion from the FOAC? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Calderon. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay. Second. Motion and second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. And that passes unanimously. So we adjourn the FOAC today at 4:46 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Do we have